Chapter 2139. Yu Yewe's Deathruin grinned. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out the supreme dazzling sun blade and slashed at Yu Yewe. Instantly, a blade ray that seemed to be condensed from countless suns slashed at Yu Yewe. Under this terrifying golden saber light, the densely packed saber light was split into two halves from the middle. It was as if the sea was split into two halves from the middle, revealing the land at the bottom of the sea. Zhuo spread his torch dragon wings and followed closely behind the saber beam with a swoosh. Bang! Yu Yewe's expression changed slightly when he saw the blade ray splitting apart the dense blade rays in front of him. When the blade ray was right in front of him, he swung his long saber horizontally and smashed it against the blade ray. Yu Yewe felt as if an unprecedented mountain was pressing down on his saber. It was incomparably heavy, and his knees involuntarily fell to the ground as cold sweat dripped down his forehead. What kind of weapon is that? This is not the power of a void sky divine artifact. Yu Yewe shouted as he looked at the supreme dazzling sun blade in Zhuowen's hand in fear. Zhuowen could not be bothered with Yu Yewe. His current strength was already comparable to a void sky 7th step expert. Without the supreme dazzling sun blade, Yu Yewe would not have been able to take him down. With the supreme dazzling sun blade, Yu Yewe was no match for Huang Xiaolong. Die. You can ask King Yama when you go to hell. Zhuowen kicked off with his right foot and silently appeared beside Yu Yewe. The supreme dazzling sun blade slowly cut through the air and slashed at Yu Yewe's abdomen. Puchi! Yu Yewe wanted to resist, but he discovered that the blade ray was suppressing him, making it impossible for him to block the attack. Bang! However, when the supreme dazzling sun blade landed on Yu Yewe's abdomen, a golden vein-shaped light emerged from Yu Yewe's abdomen and blocked the attack. Golden thread inner armor? Zhuowen was quite surprised. This golden thread inner armor was a top-grade defensive divine artifact. Normally, it would be worn at the innermost part of the armor. It was so tough that ordinary void sky divine artifacts couldn't damage it at all. Unfortunately, the supreme glorious sunblade was not a void sky divine artifact, but a weapon infinitely close to a secondary sky breaking divine artifact. Bang! The supreme glorious sunblade's blade emitted a blinding golden light. Then, the golden veins that appeared on Yu Yewe's abdomen shattered. Puchi! Yu Yewe spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backwards. A huge wound had appeared on his waist, and blood was gushing out. Yu Yewe's face paled, and his breathing accelerated as he stared intently at the golden saber in Zhuowen's hand. Heaven-crushing divine weapon, I didn't think you had something like that. Unfortunately, before Yu Yewe could finish speaking, Zhang Ziqing and the other three who had escaped from the explosion of the three elders rushed over. Then, the four of them spat out divine power from their right palms, turning it into thick, illusory chains that bound Yu Yewe's limbs. Yu Yewe's cultivation was only at the void sky 7th step, and he had been severely injured by Zhuowen's supreme glorious sun blade. Naturally, he could only resign himself to death when restrained by 4 experts of the same level. Zhuowen, our ancestor, is about to come out of seclusion. If you know what's good for you, you'd best not offend our Dark Mirage sect too thoroughly. Otherwise, when our ancestor comes, all of you will be finished. Although Yu Yewe's limbs were bound, he wasn't particularly afraid. Instead, he was a little fearless. This was because he sensed that the door of the Nether Hall had already opened, and Yu Wuxi was about to rush over. Yu Wuxi is nothing. He couldn't kill me when I ascended the void sky 2nd step, so he won't be able to kill me today either. Zhuowen walked slowly to Yu Yewe's side, the smile on his lips growing colder and colder, causing Yu Yewe's heart to tighten. At this moment, The many cultivators watching from the periphery of the Dark Mirage sect were also looking at each other, clearly not expecting things to develop to this stage. They thought that Zhuowen would be easily taken down by the Dark Mirage sect, but they didn't expect that the one to be taken down was the sect master of the Dark Mirage sect, Yu Yewei. Now, he was like a stray dog, waiting to be slaughtered by Zhuowen. The Dark Mirage sect is finished. Even the sect master has been captured alive by Zhuowen. Looks like we can't provoke this fiend anymore in the future. Although this boy has a lot of heavenly domain starry sky essence, there really aren't many in the East universe who can contend with him now that he's so strong. It's better not to look for trouble and snatch the heavenly domain starry sky essence. The eyes of the surrounding cultivators had already become wary and respectful. At the beginning, they still looked down on Zhuowen and even did not take him seriously. Now, this series of events had completely changed their view of Zhuowen, and Zhuowen had also been included in the list of ruthless people they could not afford to offend. Zhuowen, you brat, how dare you charge into the Dark Mirage sect to court death? A furious voice flew out from the depths of the forbidden grounds of the Dark Mirage sect. A sinister-looking old man leaped out and appeared not far away from Zhuowen. The ancestor of the Dark Mirage sect, Yu Wusher, has come out. Looks like this Zhuowen is going to be in big trouble. The moment they saw the sinister-looking old man, the surrounding cultivators were in an uproar, reverence in their eyes as they instinctively distanced themselves from the Dark Mirage sect. Ancestor! Ha! Zhuowen, you're dead meat. Now that the ancestor has come out, let's see what right you have to be arrogant. Yu Yewei immediately said smugly. Watch your mouth. 100 slaps. There's no need to be polite. Zhuowen glanced at Zhang Ziqing, who nodded. Then he raised his hand and mercilessly slapped Yu Yewei's face. The sound of the slap was deliberately loud so that the surrounding starry sky could hear it clearly. The corner of Yu Wusher's eyes twitched. Yu Yewei was the mighty sect master of the Dark Mirage sect. Now that he was being slapped so wantonly in front of so many people, it was no different from slapping the face of the Dark Mirage sect. After 100 slaps, Yu Yewei's face was swollen like a pig's head. Yu Wusher suppressed his anger and said coldly, Zhuowen, I'll give you a chance. Release Yewei now and kill yourself in front of me, and I can spare the lives of the 4 dogs beside you. Otherwise, all 5 of you will die. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, You mean that after I release Yu Yewei, I have to kill myself in front of you to atone for my crimes? Yu Wusher nodded confidently. Obviously, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with what he said. Zhuowen smiled and said, In other words, whether I release Yu Yewei or not, Zhuowen, will still die, right? Yu Wusher frowned slightly. He felt that something was wrong. Yu Yewei hurriedly shook his head at Yu Wusher. Unfortunately, Yu Yewei's face was swollen like a pig's head. He couldn't open his mouth at all, let alone speak. If that's the case, why should I spare Yu Yewei? Since you think that Zhuowen, will die, why can't I kill Yu Yewei and bury him with me? Don't you think so? Zhuowen's last sentence was directed at Yu Yewei. The latter hurriedly shook his head. Unfortunately, Zhuowen didn't care at all. Sect Master Yu, what a pity. Actually, I didn't want to kill you, but your ancestor forced me to kill you. There's no other way. Zhuowen, am not someone who likes to be taken advantage of. Since I'm going to die anyway, I'll just kill one to make up for it. Yu Yewei kept shaking his head and wanted to struggle. Unfortunately, Song Binhong and Chao Tairan held him down. It was all in vain. Zhuowen's glorious amethyst galaxy sword had already pierced into Yu Yewei's forehead. Chapter 2140. Formless array. At this moment, the surroundings of the dim Mirage sect were terrifyingly quiet. Everyone looked at Yu Yewei, who had been killed by Zhuowen and involuntarily swallowed their saliva. The dim mirage sect's old ancestor, Yu Wuxi, was standing right in front of Zhuowen, yet the latter had killed him so openly. This showed that Zhuowen did not put Yu Wuxi in his eyes at all. Just think about it. Who in Dongyu would dare to kill the sect master of a sect in front of an old ancestor like Yu Wuxi? There were probably only a few who would dare to do so. However, Zhuowen had done it openly and did not seem to care at all. He really killed him. This kid really killed Yu Yewei in front of Yu Wuxi. He's really bold. This kid is done for. Although he has 4 7th step void sky cultivators guarding him, Yu Wuxi is a veteran expert and is at the 8th step void sky. 4 7th step void sky cultivators are not enough to stop him. Uproar, clamor, and discussion rose up like a storm after the silence. You are courting death. A terrifying roar that shook the heavens, and earth exploded all of a sudden. Yu Wuxi was trembling all over, his face ashen with anger. He roared and punched out with his right palm. Instantly, the space within millions of miles around Yu Wuxi collapsed. Some of the cultivators nearby were unlucky enough to fall into the collapse and were crushed to pieces. Master, be careful. The 4 people led by Zhang Ziqing let out a low roar, releasing their respective god powers and gathering them around Zhuowen, resisting the collapse of the starry sky caused by Yu Wuxi's god powers. For a moment, Zhuowen was safe and sound. Boom! The moment the starry sky collapsed, a gigantic hand made of divine power reached out to grab at them. Wherever the giant hand passed, the collapse of the surrounding space suddenly stagnated, as if it was afraid of this giant divine power hand. Bang, bang, bang! Zhang Ziqing roared, and the long spear in his hand burst out with dark light. Suddenly, the surrounding starry sky collapsed and stopped. Then, the long spear heavily slammed into the big hand, and a continuous rumbling sound erupted. The moment Zhang Ziqing made his move, Lu Manfeng, Song Binhong, and Chao Tairen all made their moves as well. They used their powers to drive their life-bound god artifacts and followed closely behind. The combined power of Zhang Ziqing and the other 3 was truly terrifying. That large hand actually stopped abruptly. You guys still don't know how big the gap is between Void Sky 7 steps and Void Sky 8 steps, right? So what if the 4 of you join forces? In this seat's eyes, they're nothing but clay chickens and pottery dogs. Yu Wuxi's voice slowly came from behind the giant hand. It was ethereal and majestic. The giant hand that had stopped moving moved again, and its speed was even faster than before. The life-bound divine artifacts of Zhang Ziqing and the others were all blown away by the gigantic hand. The 4 of them also suffered from the backlash of the divine artifacts. Blood flowed from the corners of their mouths as they were sent flying in all directions. Little bastard, besides relying on the power of these 4 trash, what else can you rely on? In the end, you can't escape from the palm of my hand. After Zhang Ziqing and the others were blown away, Yu Wuxi's voice became even more ferocious. His violent divine sense landed on Zhuowen's body and firmly locked onto him. Zhuowen is finished. Yu Wuxi is going all out. Even 4 Void Sky 7 Steps powerhouses can't block this attack. It's too terrifying. The onlookers looked at the giant hand that stretched out from the collapsed starry sky and felt their minds tremble. Their hearts began to race. This was the strength of an 8 steps void, heaven realm expert. Zhuowen stood in the middle of the collapsed starry sky and silently looked up at the giant hand that was getting closer and closer. At this moment, Zhuowen's tiny body and the incomparably vast hand formed a sharp contrast. Everyone believed that Zhuowen would definitely die under this huge hand. There was no doubt about it. However, There were some people with keen observation who noticed the expression on Zhuowen's face. They didn't find any fear or panic on Zhuowen's face. Instead, he was as calm as an ancient well, as if victory was already in his grasp. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded as a fierce white light lit up from the collapsed starry sky. It became more and more dazzling, causing many onlookers to involuntarily close their eyes. Bang, bang, bang. The powerful cultivators endured the dazzling white light and paid attention to everything in the collapsed starry sky. However, they only saw the white light becoming more and more intense as the collapsed starry sky began to collapse and turn into nothingness. What kind of powerful force was needed to collapse the starry sky into nothingness? Standing in the middle of the white light, the ferocious smile on Yu Wuxi's face slowly froze, revealing a trace of confusion. The appearance of this white light was too sudden. Even Yu Wuxi didn't know where this white light came from. Is this the doing of that little bastard Zhuowen? Yu Wuxi frowned slightly. He took out 18 red talismans from his spiritual ring and formed a seal with both hands. The 18 talismans revolved around Yu Wuxi, forming a fiery red defensive pattern. After taking that blow from me, this kid should be dead. How did this white light come about? Although Yu Wuxi was very confident in his blow, he was still vigilant in his heart. Old dog Yu, that blow just now was just a tickle for me, right? It didn't hurt at all. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the white light. Yu Wuxi's pupils shrank as he discovered that this figure was Zhuowen. Not dead? Well, I'll kill you again. Let's see if you can survive this time. Yu Wuxi snorted coldly as he stretched out his right hand. A terrifying divine power poured out like a galaxy, rushing towards Zhuowen to crush him. In the blink of an eye, Yu Wuxi caught Zhuowen, who was in front of him. However, Yu Wuxi quickly discovered that what he grabbed was only an image, and it was not the real Zhuowen at all. Outside the white light, Zhuowen slowly stepped out. He looked down at the ball of light with a mocking smile on his face. The king's spirit stood silently behind Zhuowen. Yu Wuxi's blow had indeed landed in front of Zhuowen, but it had been blocked by the king's spirit. Therefore, Zhuowen was unharmed. Kid, how are you going to compensate me? This formless array is infinitely close to a level 9 array. Yu Wuxi can't break it. This old man has helped you a lot this time, right? Old man, Wuxi said, unhappily as he walked over to Zhuowen with his hands clasped behind his back. Zhuowen grinned and said, "Thank you for your help, Senior Wuxi. What do you want?" "Give me a drop of heavenly blood," Old man Wuxi said calmly. Zhuowen's smile froze and his eyes flashed. "Senior, we have established a heavenly blood contract." Chapter 2141. Yu Wuxi in despair Zhuowen frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "Merely setting up a grand formation to trap Yu Wuxi isn't worth a drop of heavenly Dao blood." Old man Wu Qing smiled slyly and said, "How about this old man help you deal with this Yu Wuxi? This Yu Wuxi is stronger than that brat Di Ling, but to this old man he's just nice to look at, but useless." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said, "Deal." "Great." Old man Wu Qing chuckled. With a stomp of his right foot, he entered the white sphere below. This white sphere was a powerful formation set up by Old man Wu Qing, and inside it was Old man Wuxi's world. Coupled with Old man Wu Qing's strength, Yu Wuxi was really in for a bad time. Zhuowen's mouth twitched. He realized that he had been tricked. Before coming to the Dark Illusion sect, Zhuowen had already made a plan. He would be the bait to attract the attention of the Dark Illusion sect. When Yu Yewei and the rest of the upper echelons came out, Zhang Ziqing and the other 7th step Void Sky experts would be on standby to kill them. Di Ling and Old man Wu Qing would stay behind. Of course, Old man Wu Qing and Zhuowen had an agreement that he wouldn't do anything for Zhuowen, So Zhuowen only asked Old Man Wu Qing to help him set up the formation in advance. When Old Man Wu Qing agreed so readily, Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. Now, it seemed that this old man was eyeing his heavenly blood. What a cunning old man, Zhuowen muttered in a slightly displeased manner. Inside the white sphere, Yu Wuxi's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He realized that he was trapped in a powerful formation. Zhuowen, that little bastard, actually plotted against me. This formation is really strong, even stronger than an ordinary 8th rank formation. How did this brat set it up without anyone noticing? Yu Wuxi said with an ugly expression, I'm really sorry. This big array was accidentally set up by this old man. It was originally set up to hunt wild dogs, but I didn't expect you to run in. A lazy voice rang out. Yu Wuxi's eyes flashed with killing intent. He stared ahead and coldly replied, "What did you say? How dare you insult me as a wild dog?" The person who appeared in front of Yu Wuxi was an extremely short old man. His height only reached Yu Wuxi's abdomen. Although the person in front of Yu Wuxi was a weirdo, Yu Wuxi didn't dare to be careless. He could feel that this dwarf old man wasn't simple. Suppressing his anger, Yu Wuxi said solemnly, "Since your excellency thinks that this you entered the array by mistake, then this is a misunderstanding. How about your excellency let this you out?" Old Man Wuqing shook his head and said, "Since you're not a wild dog, then I'll just treat you as a wild dog. How could I possibly let you out?" Yu Wuxi was so angry that his veins were bulging. This dwarf old man had repeatedly infuriated him, causing him to fly into a rage. "You're courting death." Yu Wuxi was unable to restrain his anger. With a wave of his sleeve, a terrifying divine power transformed into a flood dragon that swept towards Old Man Wuqing. Old Man Wuqing's lips curled into a mocking smile. He gently stretched out his right hand, and the surrounding white light formed a white halo that was as smooth as a mirror. The moment the flood dragon came into contact with the halo, it collapsed and disappeared without a trace. Yu Wuxi's gaze instantly turned serious. He stared at Old Man Wuqing. He knew that this old man was also an 8th step void sky cultivator, and his strength was even stronger than his own. "This old man doesn't want to talk nonsense with you. Today, you're definitely going to die. It's best if you don't resist. Otherwise, you'll suffer more," Old Man Wuqing said indifferently. His entire body slowly transformed into a white light and merged with the surrounding white light. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, the gentle white light in the surroundings suddenly became much sharper. Then it transformed into a terrifying attack. It was like countless raindrops pouring down on Yu Wuxi's body. Zhuowen silently stood outside the white light. He frowned and said, "Old Man Wuqing has already been inside for an hour. Why hasn't he come out yet? Could something have happened to him?" The Emperor's spirit shook his head and said, "Master, don't worry. Old Man Wuqing is very powerful. He's much stronger than an 8th step void sky cultivator. Although Old Man Wuqing might not be able to kill Yu Wuxi if he were to face him head-on. However, Old Man Wuqing is relying on a formation that's infinitely close to a level 9 formation. Any 8th step void sky cultivator would be doomed if they were to fall into this formation." Zhuowen nodded. His gaze returned to the white sphere below. Suddenly, he saw a figure slowly walking out. Zhuowen focused his gaze. Wasn't this figure Old Man Wuqing? Old Man Wuqing slowly walked over. In his hand was Yu Wuxi, who looked like a pile of mud. "I'll leave this person to you. This old man has already removed the void sky bridge from his body. He's no longer a threat to you." Old Man Wuqing unceremoniously threw Yu Wuxi to Zhuowen's feet and said indifferently. Zhuowen looked at the lifeless Yu Wuxi. He kicked Yu Si, but Yu Si didn't react at all. His face was ashen as if he was already dead. If Zhuowen hadn't sensed that Yu Si was still alive, he would have thought that this guy was already dead. He knew that although Yu Si wasn't dead, his heart was already dead. This was no different from being dead. After all, Yu Si was a dignified 8th step void sky cultivator. He was also the ancestor of one of the 10 great sects, the Dark Fantasy sect. He had supreme authority. Now that the Void Sky Bridge was destroyed, he was completely crippled. He didn't have much lifespan left. This blow was no different from killing him. At this moment, Old Man Wuching rubbed his hands and said, "Little guy, according to our agreement, take out a drop of heavenly Tao blood." Zhuowen looked speechlessly at the shifty-eyed Old Man Wuching. He could only take out a drop of heavenly Tao blood and give it to him. After Old Man Wuching obtained the drop of heavenly Tao blood, he was naturally overjoyed. He took the drop of heavenly Tao blood and walked to the side. He didn't plan to pay any attention to Zhuowen. At the same time, the dazzling white light finally faded away, revealing the scene of the empty starry sky. There was nothing in the starry sky. A white-clothed young man stood in the middle. This white-clothed young man was Zhuowen. The instant they noticed Zhuowen, an uproar arose in the surroundings. They didn't expect that Zhuowen was actually still alive. After seeing Zhuowen, they naturally couldn't wait to search for Yu Si. However, they quickly discovered that they didn't need to search because Yu Si was right beside Zhuowen's feet. At this moment, Yu Si's expression was unfocused. His clothes were ragged, and his body was covered in injuries. He looked like a beggar. What shocked everyone even more was that the aura on Yu Si's body was extremely weak. He was like a candle in the wind. Then, an even more shocking scene occurred. Zhuowen lowered his head and glanced at Yu Si. Then, under everyone's gazes, he unceremoniously kicked Yu Si's chest. Puchi, Chapter 2142. Big words. Everyone was dumbstruck, as if they had been petrified, looking at Yu Si, who had been kicked to the ground, their hearts filled with complex emotions. No way, what happened in that white light just now? How did Yu Si end up like this? Everyone was in an uproar, their hearts filled with doubts, unable to figure out how Yu Si ended up like this. However, they all knew that Yu Si had lost in the end, and at the hands of Zhuowen at that. Considering all this, the onlookers all maintained a certain distance from Zhuowen, not daring to approach him, as if Zhuowen was some kind of plague. "Master, how should we deal with this Yu Si?" The Emperor's spirit quickly asked. "Don't kill him yet. Take him away first. I still have some use for him." Zhuowen ordered. The Emperor's spirit nodded, grabbed Yu Si's collar, and lifted him off the ground. Yu Si's eyes glazed over as he did not resist at all. Suddenly, 2 streams of light flew over from the distant starry sky. Everyone saw that these 2 streams of light were actually 2 huge flying ships. These 2 flying ships were extremely large, far more magnificent than ordinary flying ships. They were definitely not something an ordinary force could possess. It's the flying ships of High Heaven Sect and Heavenly Demon Island. It seems that these 2 sects have also received the news and rushed over. Everyone looked over and saw that the insignia on the 2 flying ships belonged to High Heaven Sect and Heavenly Demon Island, respectively. Zhuowen slowly raised his head, his gaze falling on the 2 flying ships as a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Heavenly Demon Island's flying ship was a step ahead and blocked the path of High Heaven Sect's flying ship, forcing it to stop. The door of High Heaven Sect's flying ship opened, and Ling Yun Ji led the group of elders down with a gloomy look, glaring at Heavenly Demon Island's flying ship with an extremely hostile look. He said, "Mo Ji, What is the meaning of this? Does your heavenly demon island want to become enemies with my high heaven sect? The cabin door of the heavenly demon island flying ship opened, and Mo Chi walked down with Mo Fan Yushan and the higher-ups. He said calmly, "Yo, so it's Brother Ling. Just now, I didn't control the flying ship properly and accidentally steered it off course. Please don't take offense. Brother Ling." Hearing this perfunctory excuse, Ling Yunji was so angry that his face turned ashen. He said coldly, "Then can Brother Devil step aside now? I still have some matters to attend to at the Serene Mirage sect." Devil Barrier shrugged and said, "I also have some matters that I need to take a look at the Dark Mirage sect. Why don't Brother Ling come along?" Ling Jiyun suppressed his anger and did not waste any more words with Mo Ji. Instead, he led the group of elders in a detour towards the Dark Mirage sect. The demon repellent was neither anxious nor annoyed. Instead, he quietly followed behind Ling Yunji's team. However, when they approached the Dark Illusion sect, they discovered that the Dark Illusion sect was terrifyingly quiet. Apart from the city outside the sect, there was not a single person in the sect. At the same time, a heavy smell of blood surged over. The mountainous piles of corpses and the ruins of the sect all indicated that the Dim Illusion sect had been through an unimaginable battle. What's going on? Which force ambushed the Dim Illusion sect? Ling Yunji's eyes flickered as he muttered to himself in surprise. Although Ling Yunji had mainly come for that Zhuowen, and he had also noticed the nearby Zhuowen, he did not feel that Zhuowen possessed the strength to reduce the Dim Illusion sect to such a wretched state. "Little bastard, just what has happened to the Dim Illusion sect? You'd best tell me the truth. Otherwise, this old man will grind your bones to dust and die without a proper burial." Ling Yunji finally turned his attention to Zhuowen. He laughed savagely and shot towards Ling Yunji. "Father," Mo Fan looked rather anxiously at Devil Barrier beside him. Devil Barrier sighed softly and could only act, stopping Ling Yunji. "Devil Barrier, what do you mean by this? The Dim Illusion sect has already been reduced to such a state. It must have been destroyed by some unknown force. This Zhuowen was present and definitely knows something. Why are you stopping me? Could it be that your heavenly Devil Island is also involved?" Ling Yunji said coldly. However, Devil Barrier said indifferently, "Sect Master Ling, you still need to have some basis to speak. Otherwise, you're just slandering others." Ling Yunji had a cold smile on his face. Just as he was about to say something sarcastic, Zhuo, who was not far away, slowly walked over to Mo Ji's side. "Senior Mo Ji, thank you for your kind intentions. Leave the matter of old dog Ling to me," Zhuo said with a smile. Zhuo knew that Mo Fan and Yushan definitely had something to do with the demonic repellent helping him. Although Zhuo did not have much contact with Mo Fan and Yushan, he knew that the two of them valued kindness greatly. Back then, Zhuo had saved the two of them. The two of them were like a drop of water that should be repaid with a gushing spring. This caused Zhuo to be quite surprised. At the same time, he also had a good impression of the heavenly Devil Island. Zhuo Xiaoyu, Ling Yunji is not easy to deal with. He is the sect master of the High Heaven sect, and his cultivation has reached Void Sky 7 steps. In addition, the elders around him are also very strong, and the weakest is at least Void Sky 4 steps. Devil Barrier looked at Zhuo with surprise. He had checked Zhuo's aura and found that it was only Void Sky 4 steps. What he meant was to remind Zhuo that he was not strong enough. Ling Yunji and the others were very strong, and he was not their opponent. Although Devil Barrier also noticed Di Ling and the others not far away Di Ling and the others did not actively release their auras, so Devil Barrier and Ling Yunji did not pay much attention. Mo Fan and Yushan also hurriedly came over to persuade Zhuowen. They promised Zhuowen that their heavenly devil island would definitely protect him. This made Zhuowen not know whether to laugh or cry. Brother Mo, Yushan, this Zhuowen understands your good intentions. As Zhuowen spoke, he pointed to the ruins of the Dark Illusion sect and continued, the Dark Illusion sect was destroyed by me. This High Heaven sect can't be stronger than the Dark Illusion sect, right? I think I can still deal with it. As soon as these words came out, the faces of Devil Barrier and the other Heavenly Devil Island cultivators stiffened, and they looked at Zhuowen with strange gazes. Ling Yunji, on the other hand, laughed out loud and said, how shameless! With your Void Sky 4 steps cultivation, it's not even enough to fill the gaps between the Dark Illusion sect's teeth. How dare you talk about destroying the Dark Illusion sect? The people of High Heaven sect laughed, wantonly, completely ignoring the strange expressions of the surrounding cultivators. This was because they had seen Zhuowen destroy the Dark Illusion sect with their own eyes. Brother Zhuo, this joke is not funny, Mo Fan spoke up, and he was quite angry. This time, he was the one who urged Zhang Mo to come and rescue Zhuowen, but now Zhuowen actually said such shameless words. This was simply not taking their rescue seriously. Yushan furrowed her brows. She stared at Zhuowen and found that the latter did not seem to be joking. Her beautiful eyes glanced at the ruins of the Dark Illusion sect, and her brows furrowed even deeper. Brother Zhuo, just as Mo Fan was about to continue speaking, Yushan suddenly reached out and stopped him. Chapter 2143. Apologize. Yushan shook her head and said, I think what Brother Zhuo said makes sense. He's not an impulsive person. Mo Fan gradually calmed down. He looked at Zhuowen and moved aside to block Zhuowen's body. However, he was still angry and did not look at Zhuowen. Zhuowen shook his head helplessly. He knew that Mo Fan did not believe he had the power to destroy the Dark Fantasy sect. However, all of this would be destroyed when Zhuowen showed his strength. Ling Yunji also heaved a sigh of relief. What he was most worried about now was the Heavenly Devil Island interfering. Now that Zhuowen said he did not need Sky Demon Island's help, Ling Yunji's wish was fulfilled. Zhuowen and Ling Yunji's hatred was no less than that of the Dark Fantasy sect. Ling Yunji's son, Ling Zhuo, had been killed by Zhuowen during the interplanetary tournament. Even if Zhuowen did not have the heavenly domain star essence, Ling Yunji would not let Zhuowen go. Little bastard, where did you get your confidence from? How dare you say you can destroy the Dark Fantasy sect? Ling Yunji laughed coldly. King Spirit, slap this person 1,000 times. Zhuowen said to the King Spirit. The King Spirit, who had been keeping a low profile, did not make a sound and slowly walked over. A powerful aura that could penetrate the heavens, and the earth suddenly erupted, filling the surroundings of the starry sky and setting off a starry sky storm. The smile on Ling Yunji's face froze, and he stared at the King Spirit that was approaching him with fear. 8 steps of the void sky. Ling Yunji's lips trembled. He had only just realized that there was such a powerful person here. Could the destruction of the Dark Fantasy sect have something to do with this person? Ling Yunji was completely confused, and he did not even notice that the King Spirit was following Zhuowen's orders. At the same time, Ling Yunji also noticed that the King Spirit was holding an old man in a green robe. The green-robed elder's eyes were empty and lifeless, as if he was an emotionless puppet. Ling Yunji wasn't unfamiliar with the azure-clothed old man, because the azure-clothed old man was none other than the ancestor of the Dark Illusion sect, Yu Wuxi. The moment he recognized Yu Wuxi, Ling Yunji's whole body started to tremble, and his legs went soft. He also noticed that Yu Wuxi's aura was extremely weak, no different from that of an ordinary person. This was obviously a sign that the illusory sky bridge had been broken. The king spirit's presence was so strong, and Yu Wuxi had been crippled. It was a shock to Ling Yunji, and he didn't want to fight back. Even Yu Wuxi had fallen at the hands of this person. How could Ling Yunji, a mere 7 steps void sky, be a match for this person? Ling Yunji hurriedly lowered his head and cupped his fists, saying with a flattering smile, "Senior, I really didn't expect you to be so strong." Even the ancestor of the Dark Mirage sect, Yu Wuxi, was crippled. You're simply unparalleled. As for the group of elders that Ling Yunji brought with him, they naturally followed Ling Yunji's lead and stood trembling behind him. Unfortunately, the king spirit turned a deaf ear to his pleas and stopped in front of Ling Yunji. The people of Sky Demon Island quickly moved away from the king spirit, their eyes full of fear and respect. Mo Fan even pulled Zhuowen away from the king spirit. Zhuowen did not refuse, and he smiled as he followed Mo Fan. Zhuowen's command had been through voice transmission, so only the king spirit could hear it. Ling Yunji raised his head and quickly bowed to the monarch spirit with a flattering smile. Slap! Unfortunately, the king spirit did not appreciate his kindness, and it slapped him again. Ling Yunji's right cheek was swollen, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The king spirit had used a lot of force to slap his face. Ling Yunji was submissive, but he did not dare fight back. Ling Yunji had lost all will to fight, especially when he saw Yu Wuxi's crippled body. He thought of the king spirit as a peerless elite, and he knew he couldn't fight against such an elite. He didn't dare fight back. After all, if he did not fight back, he would still have a chance to live. If he fought back, he would definitely die. Slap, slap, slap. After the first slap, the king spirit continued to slap Han Sen's face, and the sound of the slap continued to be heard. The king spirit didn't hold back. Every slap was a real slap. Thus, such a ridiculous scene appeared in the starry sky. The sect master of High Heaven Sect, Ling Yunji, lowered his head and allowed a middle-aged man to slap him. After 1,000 slaps, Ling Yunji did not look like a human at all. His cheeks were swollen and bruised, and it was impossible to recognize Ling Yunji's original appearance. The surrounding cultivators could not help but laugh, but because of the force behind Ling Yunji, they all held back their laughter. Ha ha ha! Sect Master Ling, what are you doing? Look at your current appearance. Take a piss and look at your reflection. How did you become like this? If I were you, I would have killed myself after being humiliated like this. Zhuowen laughed loudly, mocking and ridiculing Ling Yunji without any scruples. Originally, if Ling Yunji did not take the initiative to look for Zhuowen, Zhuowen really did not plan to cause trouble for High Heaven Sect for Ren Yong'an's sake. Unfortunately, Ling Yunji did not know what was good for him. He actually ran into the muzzle of a gun and called Zhuowen a little bastard. Now, it was a tragedy. Little bastard, just you wait. When this senior is done, you're finished. You're dead. Ling Yunji glared at Zhuowen with a gloomy look and shamelessly boasted ruthlessly. Unfortunately, as soon as Ling Yunji finished speaking, the king's spirit coldly snorted and slapped Ling Yunji in the face. This time, the force was so great that Ling Yunji was slapped to the ground. Ling Yunji was confused and confused. He looked at the king spirit in confusion and said, "Senior, this junior did not mean any harm. If this junior has done anything wrong, please tell me, and this junior will do as you say." The king spirit looked at Ling Yunji indifferently and finally opened his mouth. He pointed at Zhuowen and said, "Then crawl over there and apologize to my master." As soon as these words came out, Ling Yunji nodded repeatedly, but soon he realized that something was wrong. Following the king's spirit's finger, he saw Zhuowen with a mocking look in his eyes. He was dumbfounded. Not only Ling Yunji, but Mo Fan Yushan, Mo Ji, and the others from Heavenly Demon Island who were standing beside Zhuowen were also petrified. "Junior sister, is there something wrong with my ears?" That senior from Void Sky 8 Steps seemed to call brother Zhuo Master. Mo Fan opened his mouth and suddenly asked Yushan who was next to him. Yushan nodded slightly stiffly and said, "I thought I was the only one who heard wrong, but it turns out that you also heard wrong." Emoji, on the other hand, hit both of their foreheads and said, "Is there something wrong with my ears too? You didn't hear wrong. That senior did call Zhuowen master." Speaking of this, Emoji looked at Zhuowen with a slightly complicated expression. He finally began to believe that Zhuowen's words were not just empty words. A mere Void Sky 4 Steps had a servant at Void Sky 8 Steps. In addition, Zhuowen had a large reserve of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Zhuowen did indeed have the power to destroy the Dark Fantasy Sect. If the Dark Fantasy Sect was really destroyed by Zhuowen, then this Zhuowen was too terrifying. He was definitely not someone to be trifled with. "Senior, are you joking? That Zhuowen is just an ant at Void Sky 4 Steps. How could he be your master?" Ling Yunji wanted to explain, but unfortunately, the king's spirit gave him another slap. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he said, "Are you not going to apologize?" Chapter 2144. The sound of the wind crawling in front of Zhuo when Ling Yunji lowered his head, his eyes filled with humiliation. "Leader Ling, why don't you raise your head?" Zhuowen looked down at Ling Yunji in front of him and said indifferently. Ling Yunji was shaking with anger, but he could feel the murderous intent of the king's spirit behind him. He sighed and slowly raised his head. Boom! In the instant that Ling Yunji and Zhuo Wen's eyes met, a sharp dagger emitting a misty white mist appeared in Ling Yunji's hand. It cut through the void and fiercely stabbed towards Zhuo Wen's neck at an extremely fast speed. "Watch out!" Mo Ji's face changed, and he wanted to stop the attack. Unfortunately, Ling Yunji was too close to Zhuo Wen. Moreover, this move was too sudden and too fast. The demonic repellent was unable to react in time. Mo Fan and Yushan's faces changed drastically. King Spirit, on the other hand, was surprised, but he wasn't too worried. Whoosh! The speed of the dagger was extremely fast, and the rising mist instantly covered the figures of Ling Yunji and Zhuo Wen. The surrounding people could not see what was happening inside the mist. Within the mist, Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately took out the ice lotus that emitted a threatening cold aura and placed it in front of him. Pang! When the dagger hit the ice lotus, it was instantly frozen by the ice lotus. Even Ling Yunji's right hand was completely frozen by the cold air. What? Ling Yunji's pupils shrank. He didn't expect Zhuo Wen to have such a terrifying ice lotus, a moment of carelessness, and he fell into the trap of this ice lotus, especially when he discovered that this cold chi was actually spreading along his arm to his entire body. Ling Yunji let out a low roar and immediately cut off his right arm before explosively retreating. As the mist dissipated, everyone saw Zhuo Wen standing motionlessly in the same place with a crystal-clear ice lotus floating in front of him. Ling Yunji, on the other hand, was in a sorry state with one of his arms broken, constantly retreating. "King Spirit," Zhuo Wen said coldly to the King Spirit, who was standing not too far away. The King Spirit nodded and took a step forward, appearing in front of Ling Yunji in an instant. He threw a punch at Ling Yunji's chest, and the King Spirit's fist was like a rainbow piercing through the sun. Ling Yunji's left hand took out a cloud from his spirit ring and used it to block the attack. Pang! The king's spirit threw a punch at the cloud, but it was surprisingly soft. The force of his punch was reflected back into his right fist. It was as if he was punching water, and there was no way for him to put his strength into. Humph! The king's spirit grunted and took out his halberd, thrusting it forward. The clouds were tough, but the king's spirit's halberd was not to be trifled with. The tip of the halberd shone with a sharp light as it pierced through the clouds. Ling Yunji was caught off guard, and his entire body was pierced through. The king's spirit twisted his right hand, and a raging energy exploded across the surface of the halberd. Then the cloud dissipated, and Ling Yunji spat out a mouthful of blood. "How dare you attack my master? Do you want to die?" the king's spirit said. Ling Yunji threw caution to the wind and sneered. "Do you really think I, Ling Yunji, am a fool? Do you think I don't know Zhuo Wen's character? So what if I apologize to him? I'm still going to die anyway. If I'm going to die anyway, I might as well die with him. It's a shame I didn't manage to kill that little bastard." The king's spirit looked at Zhuo Wen coldly and said, "Master, what should we do with this man?" "Kill him." Zhuo Wen's indifferent words made everyone around him tremble in fear. The king's spirit nodded, and without hesitation, he gripped the halberd with his right hand. Countless halberd phantoms erupted, and Ling Yunji, who was hanging from the halberd, screamed in agony. His whole body was torn to shreds, and he was dead. Sect Master. The group of elders brought by High Heaven Sect all showed looks of fear and immediately fled in all directions. Unfortunately, these elders did not manage to escape very far before they were intercepted by Zhang Jiqing's group of 4. Under Zhuo Wen's signal, they were all dealt with. At this moment, the surroundings were silent. For everyone, Zhuo Wen's approach was extremely overbearing. First, he destroyed the Dark Illusion sect. Then he destroyed the team from High Heaven sect. However, Zhuo Wen had the strength to destroy the Dark Illusion sect, so he was not afraid of High Heaven sect. "Brother Zhuo, what's going on? I'm a little confused." Mo Fan looked at Zhuo Wen and found that the white-robed young man in front of him gave him a strange feeling. There was no doubt that Zhuo Wen's return had a huge impact on him. The king's spirit, who followed Zhuo Wen, was a master at the 8th Void Heaven stage, and the auras of Zhang Jiqing and the others were no weaker than his father, Moj. They were obviously at the 7th Void Heaven stage. As for the short dwarf old man, not far away, his aura was even more unfathomable. He was probably not an ordinary cultivator. It could be said that the team Zhuo Wen brought back this time was too strong. Yushan's beautiful eyes looked at Zhuo Wen in confusion. Obviously, she didn't expect that after Zhuo Wen returned, such an earth-shattering change had occurred. Mo's eyes flashed, and he smiled warmly. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, do you want to come to Heavenly Demon Island?" Zhuo Wen smiled. He knew that Moj wanted to build a good relationship with him. However, since Moj had helped him before, Zhuo Wen did not intend to reject his good intentions. Seeing that Zhuo Wen had agreed, Moj was quite happy. "Zhuo Xiaoyu will come with me to the flying ship. Do you want to come with us?" Moj smiled warmly. At the same time, his attention fell on the king's spirit and the others. "We will go wherever Master goes." The king's spirit replied indifferently. Zhang Jiqing and the others nodded, obviously agreeing with the king's spirit. Old man Wuqing, on the other hand, rested his head on his hands and said indifferently, "Let's see what Zhuo Xiaoyu can do." Moj warmly invited Zhuo Wen and the others into the flying ship. At Zhuo Wen's request, he took all the resources of the Demonic Illusion sect and left. The people of the Demonic Illusion sect looked at the flying ship that was gradually disappearing, and the quiet atmosphere was immediately broken. They were all discussing what Zhuo Wen had done just now. The name Zhuowen was destined to shine in Dongyu and even the star field. The death of Ling Yunji and the elder group soon spread like wildfire to High Heaven Sect. Ling Binbing was the old ancestor of High Heaven Sect, and his cultivation was at the 8th step Void Heaven realm. Ling Binbing, who was in seclusion, had no choice but to come out. The sect master of High Heaven Sect and the elder committee had been wiped out. So how could he, the old ancestor, remain in seclusion without doing anything? However, after Ling Binbing heard the rumors in the outside world, he did not look for Zhu Wenqing to denounce him. This king needs to leave for a while. During this time, the sect must keep the defensive array open. Otherwise, this king will come back with your heads as an apology. Chapter 2145. Magatame after Ling Binbing left Dongyu, Emoji, and the others brought Zhuowen back to Heavenly Demon Island. Emoji was quite enthusiastic and personally arranged a first-class room for Zhuowen and the others, even arranging beautiful maids for each room. Zhuowen, on the other hand, chatted with Mo Fan and Yu Shan for a while before returning to his room. When he returned to his room, the Thunder Fire sword came out. Xiao He sat on its hilt and said solemnly, "Boy, you killed Ling Yunji and the others. So High Heaven Sect's old ancestor Ling Binbing probably won't let this go, right?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "I know about this, and the news of me destroying the Dark Illusion sect should have reached Ling Binbing's ears, so he won't act rashly for the time being." Xiao He frowned slightly and looked at Zhuowen in confusion. "You said for the time being? You mean Ling Binbing will still come and make a move on you?" Zhuowen grinned and said, "Of course, the sect master was killed and the elder group was destroyed. This is definitely a great shame for the sect, so Ling Binbing won't let it go easily." "You mean Ling Binbing will call for reinforcements?" Xiao He frowned. Zhuowen nodded and said, "If I'm not wrong, Ling Binbing has probably already left High Heaven Sect. But since I've already guessed it, I naturally won't let Ling Binbing leave just like that." Saying so, Zhuowen got up and walked out of the room. "Boy, where are you going?" Xiao He asked in surprise. "To High Heaven Sect." Zhuowen smiled slightly, but not long after he walked out of the room, a stalwart figure blocked Zhuowen's path. This person didn't look old and was dressed in black. His black hair danced in the wind, and his eyes glowed with a scarlet light. Seeing Zhuowen come out, this person grinned at Zhuowen with a demonic aura. "You are?" Zhuowen asked as he looked at the demonic youth in front of him with some surprise. "Heavenly Devil Island's Magatama." The demonic youth smiled. Magatama? Zhuowen's pupils constricted. He was no stranger to this name. She had mentioned it to him before. He was the patriarch of Heavenly Devil Island. He didn't expect Magatama to suddenly visit him. "So it's Senior Magatama. May I know why Senior has come?" Zhuowen cupped his hands and asked. Although Zhuowen looked calm on the surface, he was extremely vigilant in his heart. The Heavenly Devil Island was considered the strongest of the 3 major powers in the Eastern universe, and it was also one of the top 10 sections. He could feel that this Magatama was even stronger than Yu Wuxi. "It's nothing. This Mo just wanted to go to High Heaven Sect with Zhuo Xiaoyu." Magatama smiled. Zhuowen furrowed his brow and asked coldly, "Were you eavesdropping just now?" Magatama waved his hand and said with an embarrassed smile, "It's a misunderstanding. I wasn't eavesdropping. I just accidentally heard it. However, I have to remind you that High Heaven Sect's defensive spirit array is not weak, and I happen to be very familiar with it. Are you interested in cooperating with me? What benefits do I get from cooperating with you? Also, you shouldn't be cooperating with me for nothing, right?" Zhuowen asked with some vigilance. Magatama grinned and said, "If High Heaven Sect is breached this time, I will only take 20% of High Heaven Sex resources, but I also want 10 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. How about it? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, I want 90% of High Heaven Sex resources, and I can only give you 5 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Although this Magatama strength was not bad, and was also at the Void Heaven 8th step, Zhuowen had the protection of Old Man Wu Qing, a master at the peak of the Void Heaven 8th step, so he really did not fear Magatama. Magatama frowned slightly, but then smiled and said, Good, then let's have a pleasant cooperation. Let's set off now. Zhuowen said. Magatama nodded and said, Then come with me. Heavenly Demon Island's airship is ready to go. I want to add in the masters around you. As long as we break High Heaven Sect's defensive spirit array, High Heaven Sect will be fish on the chopping block. Magatama led Zhuowen out of the sky above Heavenly Demon Island, and only then did Zhuowen discover that a dense number of combat airships had been arranged around Heavenly Demon Island. Zhuowen took a deep look at Magatama. He knew that Magatama had long planned to destroy High Heaven Sect after learning that he, Zhuowen, had the strength to destroy Dark Illusion Sect. As long as High Heaven Sect was destroyed, Heavenly Demon Island would dominate Dongyu and enjoy most of the resources and business, which would definitely be of great benefit to Heavenly Demon Island's future development. Zhuowen did not say anything about Magatama's scheming. After all, the two of them were on the same page in dealing with High Heaven Sect. In the team, Zhuowen also saw the organizer, Mo Sha, who obviously also saw Zhuowen and smiled kindly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not see Mo Fan and Yushan. Obviously, Mo Sha did not intend to let them participate in this operation. Let's go. After Zhuowen, Magatama, and the others entered the main airship, Magatama gave the order to set off, and a dense group of airships swept through the starry sky like locusts. At the border of Dongyu, there was a huge transmission array. Ling Binbing walked over slowly, his gaze falling on the transmission array as he sneered and whispered, This Zhuowen is really amazing. He actually brought a Void Heaven 8th Stepmaster with him this time. It seems that this boy has a big secret. I don't believe that the old fogies of the other star fields won't be interested in this boy. As long as those old fogies come, this boy's time of death will come. Ling Binbing was actually quite wary of Zhuowen. Of course, it was not that he did not consider the possibility that Zhuowen might attack High Heaven Sect. However, their High Heaven Sect's defensive array was a peak grade 8 spirit array, and an ordinary Void Heaven 8th step cultivator might not necessarily be able to break it. After all, Zhuowen's foundation was too shallow, and Ling Binbing did not need to wait too long to invite those old fogies through the transmission array. So Ling Binbing left High Heaven Sect without worry. What Ling Binbing did not expect was that Heavenly Demon Island would cooperate with Zhuowen. If he had known, he would not have left High Heaven Sect without permission and gone to other places in the star field. Just you wait, Zhuowen, you little grasshopper. You won't be able to jump around for long. Ling Binbing muttered to himself as he planned to jump into the transmission array. However, there was one figure who was even faster than Ling Binbing. This figure was one step ahead of Ling Binbing and arrived at the transmission array. Then, this person wielded an incomparably huge halberd and smashed it against the transmission array, without any hesitation. Then, under Ling Binbing's dull gaze, the ancient transmission array collapsed inch by inch, shattering into countless pieces. You dare destroy the ancient transmission array? You court death. Ling Binbing's face was livid with anger as he roared angrily at this figure. Immediately after, he took out a huge scythe and blasted it towards this figure without any hesitation. The scythe was extremely sharp, and the moment it cut through the starry sky, the nearby stars all exploded. An invisible sharp aura surged and gathered around this figure, as if it wanted to completely crush him. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the figure swung the halberd in his hand, and the violent astral winds caused the surrounding space to distort, forming a starry round shield. It actually blocked all the dense and sharp chi forces. After a series of explosions, this figure finally revealed his true appearance. It was a middle-aged man with an indifferent expression. "Who are you?" Ling Binbing's gaze was solemn as he looked at this middle-aged man and asked, Chapter 2146, Cooperation. The moment he heard the name Zhuowen, Ling Binbing had a bad premonition in his heart. In High Heaven Sect, Ling Binbing had heard rumors that Zhuowen had an 8-step void sky slave. At first, he didn't believe it, but now he had no choice but to believe it. This little bastard actually guessed this king's whereabouts. Ling Binbing slowly calmed down and stared coldly at the Emperor's spirit. "From the looks of it, you've only just broken through to the 8-step void sky. You think you can stop me? Where did Zhuowen go? Tell him to come out too." The corners of the Emperor's spirit's mouth curled into a mocking smile as he said, "It's enough to stop you. As for Master, he has already gone to High Heaven Sect." Ling Binbing's gaze changed slightly, but soon he sneered, "He doesn't even have an 8-step void sky slave with him. This boy can't break through High Heaven Sect's Grand Array." "Oh, what if Heavenly Demon Island's Magatama and its fleet are added in? Do you still think you can't break through High Heaven Sect's Grand Array?" The Emperor's spirit sneered. Ling Binbing's expression changed drastically. He didn't expect Heavenly Demon Island to also want to get involved. What's more, Magatama was the strongest 8-step void sky cultivator among the 3 great forces of Dongyu. Because the 3 great forces of Dongyu were in a competitive relationship with each other, each of them knew the weaknesses of their respective sects' grand arrays. Now, that Ling Binbing was not in High Heaven Sect. The Grand Array was much weaker than usual. With Magatama and Heavenly Demon Island's forces, High Heaven Sect's Grand Array would not last long. "I have to go back quickly." Ling Binbing stomped his right foot, intending to return to High Heaven Sect. Unfortunately, a large halberd pierced through the air and nailed itself in front of Ling Binbing. A powerful halberd phantom swept over like a storm, forcing Ling Binbing to retreat a few steps. "You can't go back yet," the Emperor's spirit said indifferently. "You court death." Ling Binbing roared angrily and slammed his right palm into the starry sky. Instantly, his divine power swam like a dragon and transformed into a variety of illusory weapons around him. Each of these weapons exuded a peerless radiance. The terrifying weapon shadow set off a storm, and the halberd shadow in front of it was instantly torn apart. The king's spirit was not afraid of Ling Binbing. Although he had just reached Void Sky 8 levels, he had a lot of heavenly star essence. He could fight Ling Binbing with all his might. The purpose of the Emperor's spirit this time was to delay Ling Binbing. After Zhuo, when completely destroyed High Heaven Sect, the Emperor's spirit would come to join him and take down Ling Binbing. Inside the flying ship, Zhuowen held the ice lotus in his right hand. With a thought, the petals on the ice lotus fell off and attached themselves to Zhuowen's body, forming a crystal-clear ice armor. At the same time, the petal of the lotus seat was like a praying mat, quietly floating under Zhuowen's feet, lifting him up into the air. Through the lotus seat and lotus flower, Zhuowen discovered that the laws of the surrounding starry sky were within his reach. I really didn't expect this ice lotus to not be used for defense, but mainly for cultivation. By cultivating with this ice lotus, one can actually directly touch upon the laws of the universe. Zhuowen slowly put away the ice lotus, a look of joy appearing in his eyes. The ice lotus was obtained from the dark spirit sect's forbidden area, Nether Hall, where Yu Wu Si was in seclusion, when he wreaked havoc in the Dark Spirit sect. Now that Zhuowen had returned to this place and destroyed the Dark Mirage sect, Yu Wuxi had also become his prisoner. As for the true use of the Ice Lotus, Zhuowen had naturally obtained it from Yu Wuxi's memories. From Yu Wuxi's memories, Yang Kai learned that this Ice Lotus was obtained by chance in his early years. Because this Ice Lotus allowed one to directly touch upon the laws of the universe while cultivating, Yu Wuxi's cultivation speed was much faster than ordinary cultivators. In a short period of time, he had successfully reached Void Sky 8 levels. At that time, Yu Wuxi was the youngest of the 8 great sects to reach Void Sky 8 levels. However, after Yu Wuxi's cultivation reached Void Sky 8 levels, the Ice Lotus did not have much of an effect on his cultivation. Even if he completely grasped the laws of the universe, it was useless because what he needed to reach Void Sky 9 levels was not the laws of the universe, but a trace of the heavenly Tao. Although the Ice Lotus did not have much of an effect on Yu Wuxi's cultivation, its defensive power was comparable to a secondary heaven-shattering divine artifact, so Yu Wuxi treasured this Ice Lotus very much. Back then, Yu Wuxi had pursued Zhuowen so closely because of this Ice Lotus. This Yu Wuxi is not simple. The other sects don't even know that he has this Ice Lotus. If Yu Wuxi had the Ice Lotus with him, even old man Wu Qing wouldn't have been able to kill him. Zhuowen's eyes turned solemn. The defensive power of this Ice Lotus was really strong. With Yu Wuxi's help, it would be too difficult for old man Wu Qing to kill Yu Wuxi. Fortunately, Zhuowen had taken this Ice Lotus away, causing Yu Wuxi to lose this powerful divine artifact. After destroying High Heaven Sect, I must enter secluded cultivation. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He now had 2 supreme treasures, the Ice Lotus and the Azure Wave Sealed Realm. So he was very confident in reaching Void Sky 5 levels. Xiaoyu, we've arrived at High Heaven Sect. Although I know the weakness of the defensive array, I still need to borrow the power of your servant. Magatama's voice came from outside the room. Okay. Zhuowen thought for a moment before agreeing. On the deck of the main airship, Magatama stood with his hands behind his back at the front of the deck, while Mo-i stood respectfully behind him. Zhuowen slowly walked behind Magatama, followed by Zhang Ziqing and the others silently, while old man Wu Qing leisurely strolled around the deck. Magatama turned and glanced at Zhuowen before looking meaningfully at old man Wu Qing, who was strolling around the deck, and said, "If this old man takes action, the defensive array can be broken in an instant." Old man Wu Qing shrugged and said, "This old man won't take action unless this little brat gives me a reward." Zhuowen's face twitched. How could he not know that the reward old man Wu Qing mentioned was the heavenly Tao blood? This thing would be depleted the more he used it, so he didn't want to continue wasting it. Moreover, Zhuowen didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that old man Wu Qing's aura had become thicker and more powerful than before. Although he still looked like a dwarf, he gave off the illusion of being tall and mighty. It seems that this old man used that drop of heavenly Tao blood. I'll let the 4 of them assist you. How long will it take to break the array? Zhuowen asked, pointing to Zhang Ziqing and the others behind him. Maybe 2 or 4 hours. Come down with me now. Also, Mo-i, if those reckless disciples of High Heaven Sect dare to come out and cause trouble, kill them all. Magatama looked at Mo-i and said. Mo-i hurriedly nodded. Magatama nodded with satisfaction and led Zhang Ziqing and the others out of the main airship. It's Heavenly Demon Island. I didn't expect Heavenly Demon Island to attack our High Heaven Sect. What should we do? Old Ancestor has left, and Sect Master and the Elder Group have been wiped out. We are no match for Heavenly Demon Island. Chapter 2147. Elder Bai. Everyone, don't panic. Old Ancestor will soon return with reinforcements. We still have the defensive spirit array, so as long as we hide inside, Heavenly Demon Island's army won't be able to break in. A middle-aged man stood out and shouted, temporarily calming the crowd's panicked emotions. That's Heavenly Demon Island's old ancestor, Magatama. He came in to break the spirit array. What should we do? He's an 8th step void sky master. Suddenly, a disciple noticed that Magatama, with Zhang Jiqing's group of 4, had landed on the defensive spirit array. Attack them! The middle-aged man's face changed slightly, and he immediately arranged for people to stop Magatama's group of 5. However, the moment these High Heaven Sect disciples left the protective array, they were blasted to smithereens by Heavenly Demon Island's airships. Zhuowen jumped down from the airship and looked down at the many High Heaven Sect disciples. Everyone, I have no grievances with you and have no intention of targeting you. Now, I'll give you a chance. Swear to leave High Heaven Sect, and I'll let them go immediately. As soon as these words came out, the many High Heaven Sect disciples, who were originally filled with panic, calmed down, their eyes filled with hope. They naturally recognized the young man in white who jumped out of the main airship as Zhuowen, the one who destroyed the Serene Illusion Sect. In the eyes of many High Heaven Sect disciples, Zhuowen and Heavenly Demon Island were too powerful, and their High Heaven Sect was no match for them. Everyone, don't be fooled by this boy. Old Ancestor will be back soon, and when Old Ancestor returns, if you leave High Heaven Sect, you know the consequences. The defensive spirit array can still hold on for a while, so don't give up. A sharp voice suddenly came from the crowd, and Zhuowen turned his head and saw a familiar figure. It was an old-fashioned old man, and Zhuowen happened to have met this old-fashioned old man once before. When he first entered Dongyu, Run Yangon had given him a recommendation letter to become an inner sect disciple of High Heaven Sect. At that time, Zhuowen came to High Heaven Sect with a recommendation letter, but he was rejected by this old-fashioned old man and even threatened to kick him out. At that time, the disciple guarding the door seemed to have called this old-fashioned old man Elder Bai. Now that so many years had passed, he could still meet this Elder Bai. Indeed, enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Elder Bai also noticed Zhuowen's gaze. His expression changed slightly, and he could not help but take a few steps back. When he first learned of Zhuowen's name, he didn't know that Zhuowen was Long One. However, ever since he learned that Zhuowen had destroyed the Hidden Illusion Pavilion, he was certain that the young man he had rejected was the audacious and infamous Zhuowen. Back then, Zhuowen had caused an uproar in the star field and was a household name. Although Elder Bai was shocked by Zhuowen's actions, he did not take it to heart. After all, in Elder Bai's opinion, this Zhuowen was wanted by the 8 great sects and had no path to heaven or earth. If he was caught, he would definitely die. However, when he heard that this Zhuowen had destroyed Dark Illusion Sect after returning, and even their sect master had fallen at his hands, Elder Bai truly panicked. He was afraid that Zhuowen would still remember him, afraid that Zhuowen would find trouble with him, so he strongly opposed High Heaven Sect's surrender. You don't have much time. After the spirit array is broken, if you still haven't left High Heaven Sect, don't blame this Zhuo for being ruthless. Saying so, the murderous intent in Zhuowen's eyes was no longer concealed, causing the many High Heaven Sect disciples inside the spirit array to tremble in fear. Zhuowen floated silently above High Heaven Sect, the many airships behind him glaring fiercely as the High Heaven Sect disciples trembled and hesitated. Time passed slowly, and soon an hour had passed. The spirit array above High Heaven Sect trembled violently and gradually dimmed, a clear sign that it was about to break. This spirit array won't last much longer. I'll give you one more chance. Swear to leave High Heaven Sect, and I'll let you live Zhuowen said again, I swear to leave High Heaven sect. Finally, a High Heaven sect disciple could not stand the tension and swore loudly. With one taking the lead, there was naturally a second. Most of the cultivators in High Heaven sect put down their weapons and swore to leave High Heaven sect. Asterisk Han Long. Asterisk at the same time, the spirit array was finally broken. The other disciples who were originally hesitating hurriedly swore to surrender loudly. Those who swore to leave High Heaven sect can leave now. The rest are not allowed to leave. Magatama laughed happily and immediately ordered the Heavenly Demon Island disciples to surround High Heaven sect. More than 90% of High Heaven sect's disciples had sworn to leave High Heaven sect, so they were basically let go. The remaining 10% were High Heaven sect's core disciples, who were also loyal supporters of High Heaven sect. Even if they died, they did not intend to leave High Heaven sect. This group of core disciples was wiped out by Magatama's people. Wait. When an old-fashioned old man walked out of the encirclement, Zhuowen suddenly stopped him. This old-fashioned old man had his back to Zhuowen and was trembling all over. Sir, I swore to leave High Heaven sect. I am no longer a member of High Heaven sect. Before Zhuowen could speak, the old-fashioned old man spoke first. Turn around, Elder Bai. Zhuowen said coldly. The old-fashioned old man trembled all over and could only slowly turn around, lowering his head, not daring to look at Zhuowen. Elder Bai, do you still remember the first time I came to High Heaven sect? Zhuowen said with a smile. Elder Bai's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he knelt on the ground and hurriedly pleaded, Sir Zhuowen. This lowly one had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive this lowly one's transgressions and spare this lowly one this once. Zhuowen said faintly, How do you think I can spare you? Elder Bai trembled even more violently as he grit his teeth and severed one of his arms. From now on, this arm is crippled and will never be used again. Zhuowen looked at Elder Bai, who was enduring severe pain, and could see that the foundation of Elder Bai's right arm had been severed. Even the power of the Void Bridge could not be restored. In the future, Elder Bai's strength would be greatly reduced, and there would be no hope for him to break through. Zhuowen waved his hand and said dispiritedly, Scram! Elder Bai hurriedly nodded and left the place. Shui Xiaoyu, taking down High Heaven sect, is easier than we thought. The list of High Heaven sect's resources is here. You can take a look at it, and when the time comes, you can choose which 90% you want first. Magatama landed in front of Zhuowen and handed a jade slip to Zhuowen, which recorded all the resource reserves of High Heaven sect. Zhuowen threw the jade slip to Zhang Jiqing and instructed him to make a decision before taking out a jade bottle from his spirit ring and handing it to Magatama. Senior, many thanks for your help this time. Here are 5 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Chapter 2148. The plan after putting away the Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Magatama was obviously much more enthusiastic than before. Zhuowen also knew that Motion's main purpose in helping him eradicate High Heaven sect was to obtain the Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence. Of course, it was also because High Heaven sect was a competing force on Heavenly Demon Island, but that was definitely not the main reason. Someone's coming. Magatama raised his head and looked into the distance where a stream of light was quickly rushing over. Zhuowen looked over and said, It's my servant. This stream of light was extremely fast and arrived at the open space where Zhuowen was in an instant, revealing the figure of the Emperor Spirit, who knelt in front of Zhuowen on one knee. Master, this subordinate was incompetent, and let Ling Binbing escape. The Emperor Spirit apologized. It's fine. I sent you to delay Ling Binbing. Now that High Heaven sect has been destroyed, Ling Binbing has escaped. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, After all, Ling Binbing was High Heaven Sec's old ancestor. His strength might not be as good as Yu Wuxi's, but he must have some trump cards. The Emperor's spirit had just broken through to the Void Sky 8 steps, so killing Ling Binbing was obviously beyond his ability. Magatama's eyes flashed as he said, "Shui Xiaoyu, you'd better be careful of Ling Binbing. That old man might go to other places in the star field and encourage the old ancestors of other sects who have grievances with you to deal with you." Zhuowen smiled and said, "Dongyu is now Heavenly Demon Island's territory. Senior Magatama, you won't let the old ancestors of other sects come to Dongyu so easily, right? Moreover, I haven't finished collecting my debt yet." Saying so, Zhuowen handed a jade bottle to Magatama. Magatama's heart moved. Even if he did not open the bottle, he knew that it contained the heavenly domain star essence. "You are very bold. Could it be that you deliberately let Ling Binbing go?" Magatama frowned slightly. He began to be unable to see through the white-clothed youth in front of him. "I didn't do it on purpose. It's just a pleasant surprise. Since Ling Binbing has escaped, we'll just beat him at his own game. However, we'll need the cooperation of Senior and your Heavenly Devil Island." Zhuowen clasped his hands. Magatama nodded. "I will definitely help you if I can. The ancestors of the other sects aren't fools. They won't make a move against the Heavenly Devil Island just because of Ling Binbing's instigation. After all, the Heavenly Devil Island is the local tyrant of the Eastern Universe. However, those old fellows will likely target you. Thus, you should be the one to be careful." Zhuowen said solemnly, "Senior, your Heavenly Devil Island should also have an ancient teleportation array, right?" Magatama took a deep look at Zhuowen. He had some guesses about the latter's plan. He said solemnly, "You want to lure the tiger away from the mountain after Ling Binbing summons the other senior members of the sect?" "Yes. At that time, I will destroy the ancient teleportation array. After this is over, this junior will compensate Senior for the ancient teleportation array," Zhuowen said. Magatama frowned slightly but shook his head. "You can't teleport within the Heavenly Devil Island because you will drag the Heavenly Devil Island down with you. You are a loose cultivator and can escape without any scruples, but I'm different. The Heavenly Devil Island is my foundation." "Then how about this?" Zhuowen transmitted his voice to Magatama and told him his plan. Magatama, who was frowning slightly, immediately relaxed and nodded with a smile. "This plan is good. This way, the other old fellows won't be able to get anything on the Heavenly Devil Island." "Then it's settled. Next, we'll see when Ling Binbing summons reinforcements," Zhuowen whispered with a sneer. The destruction of the Dark Mirage sect and the High Heaven sect shocked the entire Eastern Universe and even the star field. All the cultivators discussed animatedly, setting off a wave of excitement. At the same time, Zhuowen's name once again shook the entire star field. More than a decade ago, Zhuowen's name had already resounded like thunder in the star field. First place in the Interstellar System Grand Tournament, toying with the 8 great sect masters, and even wreaking havoc in the Dark Mirage sect. Everything Zhuowen did back then was talked about enthusiastically and caused a great sensation. But more than a decade later, Zhuowen returned to Eastern Universe again and directly destroyed the Dark Mirage sect. The destruction of the High Heaven sect was also due to Zhuowen's help. The destruction of the 2 great sects caused Zhuowen's reputation to reach an unprecedented height. He was also listed by many cultivators as a ruthless person that they could not afford to provoke. There were even some rumors that described Zhuowen as a ferocious and repulsive demon that was used to scare some young children. While the outside world was abuzz with rumors, Zhuowen himself was cultivating in the private room arranged by the demonic barrier on the Heavenly Devil Island. At this moment, Zhuowen was sitting on an ice lotus, surrounded by petals as he silently sensed the starry sky laws. His understanding of the starry sky laws was also becoming deeper and deeper. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and looked at the dwarf old man sitting on the table in front of the room. He said, "Senior Wu Qing, why don't you knock every time you come in?" Old Wu Qing looked at his crossed legs and said, "This old man doesn't have that habit. Could it be that you have something that can't be seen?" Old Wu Qing cast a sidelong glance at the lotus seat Zhuowen was sitting on and smiled meaningfully. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he put away the lotus seat. He said, "You should have seen the ancient teleportation array on the heavenly Devil Island, right? Can you imitate the ancient teleportation array and set up a new one?" Old Wu Qing frowned and said, "I've seen the ancient teleportation array. It should be a teleportation array left behind from 1,000,000 years ago. It can teleport across most of the heaven domain. It's an extremely complicated and profound formation. I have to say that those formation masters from millions of years ago are really too powerful. The teleportation array really is very far away. Now, only a 9th level formation master can set it up, and it might not even succeed." With that, Zhuowen frowned and said, "You mean you can't set it up?" Old man Wu Qing was flustered and exasperated. "Bullshit! If we were to set up an ancient teleportation array for no reason, I would indeed be powerless. However, with this ready-made ancient teleportation array as a reference, it is more than enough to set up this ancient teleportation array. Oh, then I'll have to trouble you, Senior. I hope you can set up an ancient teleportation array here." Zhuowen grinned and took out a jade slip, handing it to old Wu Qing. The jade slip recorded the star chart of Dongyu. "You plan to set up an ancient teleportation array at the old site of the demonic illusion sect." Old Wu Qing looked at the star chart and asked in surprise. "Yes, there aren't many ancient teleportation arrays in Dongyu. They were destroyed when the demonic illusion sect and high heaven sect were destroyed. The ancient teleportation array at the border of Dongyu was also destroyed by the Emperor's spirit. Other than the ancient teleportation array on the heavenly Devil Island, there isn't a second ancient teleportation array in Dongyu," Zhuowen said. Originally, Zhuowen planned to use the ancient teleportation array on heavenly Devil Island, but this would cause trouble for heavenly Devil Island, so Zhuowen planned to let old Wu Qing imitate the ancient teleportation array and set up a temporary teleportation array. Ordinary teleportation arrays couldn't teleport very far. Only this ancient teleportation array could cross the heaven domain and teleport cultivators from Dongyu to other places in the star field. The star field was too big. If he flew by flying ship, it would take at least 1 or 2 months. Zhuowen didn't have that much time. Chapter 2149, The 20th Fire. Old man Wu Qing thought for a while and nodded. "Yes, but this ancient teleportation formation isn't simple. Even if it's a temporary teleportation formation, it will take at least a month." "That's enough time." Zhuowen nodded. After old man Wu Qing left, Zhuowen sat in the room for a while. He then waved his sleeve and summoned a green whirlpool. "For the remaining time, I'll cultivate in the Tsanglan Mystery Land. If my original body can break through the void sky 5th step in this period of time, it'll be best." Zhuowen muttered and entered the green whirlpool. In the Tsanglan Mystery Land, there were 5 figures sitting cross-legged. The 5 of them were naturally Zhuowen's 5 servants, king spirits, Zhang Zicheng, Song Binhong, Lu Manfeng, and Chao Tairan. At that moment, Zhuowen urgently needed stronger assistance. Hence, he would naturally spare no effort in assisting the 5 of them. After all, the stronger the 5 of them were, the more help they would be to him. especially Zhang Ziqing. He was already at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step, and was only half a step away from the Void Sky 8th step. If he could successfully advance to the Void Sky 8th step in this period of time, it would be of great help to Zhuowen's next plan. Master, seeing Zhuowen enter, the 5 of them quickly stood up and bowed to Zhuowen respectfully. After Zhuowen signaled the 5 of them to cultivate, he found a spot and took out the ice lotus to continue cultivating. At the same time, he summoned the black-clothed Zhuowen. The black-clothed Zhuowen had already passed through 18 fires. He was only 2 more fires away from becoming real God Supreme Fire. Once he became real God Supreme Fire, Zhuowen's fighting power would be enough to kill a Void Sky 7th step cultivator easily. He wouldn't even be afraid of a Void Sky 8th step cultivator. The Calamity crystals are almost used up. This is the last of the reserves. Zhuowen looked at the disaster crystals that were piled up into a small mountain around the black-clothed Zhuowen and sighed. He didn't know if the last disaster crystals would be able to help the black-clothed Zhuowen become real God Extreme Fire completely. Moreover, after using up all the disaster crystals, Zhuowen was a bit distressed. Where would he go to find more disaster crystals? Could it be that he was going to enter Zhong Yu's training grounds again? He heard that since the last Interstellar System Great Competition, the Central Universe Trial Ground had been closed. The cultivators who stayed in the trial ground had basically been driven out. Entering the trial ground to fish for disaster crystals was obviously not realistic. Let's use up these disaster crystals first. When the time comes, I'll ask around and see if there are any other places that have reserves of disaster crystals other than the Central Universe Trial Ground. The eyes of the black-clothed Zhuowen flickered. He calmed his heart, slowly closed his eyes, and began to absorb the energy within the Calamity crystal. The demonic mist around him continued to churn. Time passed day by day, and soon more than a month had passed. The 6 people in the Songlan secret realm had all gained something, especially Zhang Ziqing. The aura on his body was much stronger than before, and there were faint signs of a breakthrough. Zhuowen's main body slowly opened his eyes and walked down from the lotus seat with a trace of pity in his eyes. In the past 2 months, under the interaction of the Ice Lotus and the Songlan secret realm, his progress was actually very fast. His aura had already reached the peak of the 4th step of the Void Sky realm. However, there was still a gap between him and the 5th step of the Void Sky realm. Zhuowen knew that it wasn't because he didn't have enough resources, but because his realm wasn't high enough. After all, Zhuowen's breakthrough speed was too fast. It had only been more than 10 years since he advanced to the Void Sky realm, but he had already reached the 4th step of the Void Sky realm and pierced through the starry sky. 4 Void Sky cultivators. More than 10 years was like a snap of a finger. It was extremely short. Most Void Sky cultivators would need hundreds or thousands of years to break through a small realm. Some even needed tens of thousands of years. People like Zhuowen, who broke through several realms consecutively in more than 10 years, were considered rare. Of course, this was all because of Zhuowen's heaven-defying opportunities. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to cultivate so fast by relying on his cultivation alone. Whoosh! Suddenly, strong and dazzling sparks surged, and the temperature of the entire Songlan secret realm rose sharply. In an instant, it became like a furnace. Di Ling and the other 4 awakened, and their gazes involuntarily fell on the black-robed Zhuowen not far away. The calamity crystals around the black-clothed Zhuowen had long since turned to dust. Even the demonic mist covering his body had dissipated, revealing the black-clothed Zhuowen's slender figure. Flames emerged from the bottom of Zhuowen's feet. These flames weren't the usual fiery red, but purple-black. They looked extremely evil. The 19th fire. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. With a wave of his sleeve, everyone in the Tsanglan secret realm was teleported out. Boom! The moment the black-clothed Zhuowen appeared outside, the surging purple-black flames were like a berserk dragon that spread in all directions. "Leave this room," Zhuowen shouted in a low voice, and left the room first. Di Ling and the others followed closely behind. After the 6 of them left the room, the huge pavilion was engulfed by the purple-black flames and turned into fine powder. The black-robed Zhuowen took a step forward and leaped into the starry sky. He sat down cross-legged as purplish-black flames stirred up terrifying gales that constantly swept out. The starry sky within a radius of tens of millions of kilometers was actually filled with the purplish-black flames. Zhuowen's strange behavior attracted the attention of many Sky Demon Island disciples. Even the leader, Mara, and the ancestor, Magatama, came out to look at the sky. "It's a fire. What a scary power. This is not an ordinary fire." Mara squinted his eyes. Magatama nodded and said, "This is the 19th fire. That should be Zhuo Xiaoyu's avatar, right? It seems that Zhuo Xiaoyu wants this avatar to walk the same path as Crepe Myrtle Star King. 3 extreme realms? Even Crepe Myrtle Star King failed. Is this possible?" Mara asked with surprise. "Who knows?" The fire's power is increasing. The 20th fire is coming at once." Magatama was shocked and looked in that direction. In the sky above, the purple-black flames were twisting and collapsing. Then, above the flames, there was a giant hole. Deep inside the hole, there was a claw bigger than Sky Demon Island. The claw was huge, and its surface was covered with purple-black flames. It burned fiercely, and it had the power to cover the sky. When the claw appeared, it attacked the black-robed Zhuowen, who was surrounded by the purple-black flames. "The 20th fire is coming. That's scary." Zhuowen's real body looked gloomy. Without hesitation, he threw the ice lotus to the black-robed Zhuowen. The black-clothed Zhuowen received the ice lotus. Immediately, he held the ice lotus with both hands. The ice lotus immediately began to swell. Finally, it turned into an incomparably huge ice lotus that blotted out the sun. It was lifelike crystal clear and had a threatening cold aura. Rumble! The claw and ice lotus collided. The entire sky shook. The purple-black flames and the icy blue cold air rose, dividing the sky above into 2 extreme regions. Chapter 2150, Counterattack of the Great Path. Activate the Great Defensive Formation. The 20th fire of Zhuowen's clone is too intimidating. Magatama changed his visage. He leaped into the air, his hands making hand seals. Instantly, the Great Defensive Formation of the Heavenly Demon Island was activated. In the starry sky, the half-fire, half-ice world had already descended the moment the protective array was activated. It slammed into the array, causing it to tremble violently and totter on the verge of collapse. Zhuowen's real body was being protected by the king spirits, moving away from the heavenly demon island. At this moment, Zhuowen's face was dark like water. Through the connection with his clone, he found that his clone wasn't in a good condition. Although the Ice Lotus's ice ability was indeed powerful, the 19th and 20th fires had caught the clone in the middle, and even the Ice Lotus was barely able to withstand them. Moreover, his clone had to endure the tremendous impact of the collision between the ice and fire energies. His bones were cracking, and they were breaking. What a terrifying impact. Seems like if the clone doesn't show his real body, he can't resist for a long time. Zhuowen sighed. In the center of the fire, the black-clothed Zhuowen faced the sky and roared. Demon mist rolled unceasingly from his body. His tiny body expanded rapidly, revealing Devour's massive body, which wasn't smaller than the heavenly demon island. Why is Zhuowen's real body so big? Is it a giant star beast? Magatama and the others had their eyes twinkling, looking at Devour's giant body. They couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. After Devour had revealed his real body, his tough body, and the cold air of the ice lotus had helped him resist the terrifying fire. Now, we just need to wait for the fire to subside. Zhuowen's real body stood in the starry sky, watching Devour resist the fire, his eyes twinkling. The fire had lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. When the 3rd day was about to pass, Zhuowen thought that the fire would subside. However, things didn't go as he wished. Rumble! Rumble! All of a sudden, a massive hole appeared in the sky. The giant claw created by the fire energy tore the sky, creating a hole that was dozens of times bigger than the previous one. A fire Qilin that was even more intimidating than Devour slowly walked out of the hole. Its pair of dark, purple eyes gazed at Devour coldly, which made people shudder. What's going on? The fire didn't subside. How come it's getting stronger? The king's spirits muttered in fright. Zhuowen's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He gazed at the giant fire Qilin and said, "This fire Qilin, it isn't the power of the starry sky. This is the power of the heavenly Tao. Although it's only a trace of the heavenly Tao's rules, it's still the power of the heavenly Tao. Little guy, where did this clone of yours come from? Why did it cause the obstruction of the heavenly Tao's rules when it passed through the 20th fire?" An aged voice suddenly rang out. Old Wuqing had appeared beside Zhua when at some unknown time. His turbid eyes were also staring at the huge fire Qilin. "Senior, could it be that you can't tell the origin of this clone of mine? He's Devour from the star race." Zhuowen looked at Old Ruthless. Although Devour was almost extinct in the 8 heavens, he knew that old monsters like Old Ruthless and Magatama, who had lived for so long, could recognize Devour's real body at first glance. Old man Wuqing shook his head and said, "No, although Devour is a strong clan in the starry sky, it's far from being devoured by the Great Path's rules. At most, it's repelled by the starry sky's rules. However, your clone is repelled by the Great Path's rules." Zhuowen was startled. According to Old Ruthless, his clone wasn't Devour, right? "Kid, you don't need to be so shocked. Judging from the features of your clone, it's Devour from the starry sky. However, your clone isn't an ordinary Devour. Otherwise, how could the Great Path reject you? How did you get this doppelganger?" Old man Wuqing seemed to have noticed Zhuowen's strange expression and could not help but ask in surprise. "I got Devour's larva by chance, so I seized it." Zhuowen smiled embarrassedly, but his heart was gloomy. When he knew that the naughty Shiva and Tai Ching cared a lot about Devour's larva, Zhuowen felt a little strange. No matter what, those two were the supreme existences of the 9 heavens territories in the void sky. Even though Devour was a strong clan in the starry sky, it was still barely comparable to them. But now, he realized that he was wrong. Devour wasn't simple at all. It was possible that he had something that both Sakyamuni and Tai Ching wanted. However, Zhuowen couldn't figure out what it was. Moreover, he didn't understand one thing. With Sakyamuni and Tai Ching's strength, it should be easy for them to seize Devour's clone. However, Tai Ching didn't do that. After the bet with the naughty Shiva, Zhuowen hadn't seen the naughty Shiva even once. The naughty Shiva seemed to have forgotten about him. This Devour isn't simple. Zhuowen raised his vigilance. Previously, he was a bystander, so he didn't see Devour's difference. But now, after the 20th fire, Old Ruthless reminded him. He knew that Devour could trigger the Great Path's power. It was unimaginable. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the fire Qilin was engaged in a fierce battle with Devour. Devour's body combined with the cold air of the ice lotus made it hard for him to defeat the fire Qilin. Moreover, Devour had released his innate ability. However, the fire Qilin had a wisp of the Great Path's principle. No matter how fierce Devour was, he was still suppressed by the fire Qilin. "Kid, let's cooperate," old Ruthless suddenly said to Zhuowen. "What? Cooperate?" Zhuowen frowned. "The fire Qilin has a wisp of the Great Path's principle. Although it's very small, much smaller than your Great Path blood, it can still extract the Great Path's principle. Do you dare to snatch the Great Path's principle with this old man?" Old Ruthless licked his lips. Zhuowen was extremely calm. He asked, "How can we extract the Great Path's blood?" "With the Great Path's blood as a guide and this old man's skill in formations, there's a high chance that we can extract the Great Path's principle from the fire Qilin. As long as the Great Path's principle is extracted, the fire Qilin won't be a match for your clone," old Ruthless continued. "Okay, we'll split the extracted Great Path's blood in half." Old Ruthless nodded. Then he signaled Zhuowen with his eyes. The two of them dashed into the fire at the same time. "Old Ancestor, Zhuowen and the dwarf old man have entered the fire." In the Heavenly Demon Island, mages noticed Zhuowen and Old Ruthless. Chapter 2151. Old Man Wu Qing makes a move. "I'll cover you. Be careful. I just calculated that the trace of heavenly law is between the fire Qilin's eyebrows. You have to get close to the fire Qilin." As Old Man Wu Qing dodged the incoming fire, he took out a formation disc from his spirit ring and tossed it to Zhuowen. He continued, "This formation disc can turn the laws of the heavenly Tao into corporeal heavenly Tao blood. Keep it safe." After saying that, Old Man Wu Qing leaped up. His skinny right hand pinched the air, and a 3-meter-long saber appeared in his hand. On the blade of this saber, there were vivid and lifelike drawings of fluttering bamboo leaves. When the blade slashed through the air, it actually brought along the afterimages of fluttering bamboo leaves, giving people a tranquil feeling of being in a bamboo forest. If someone thought that the bamboo leaves were harmless, they would be gravely mistaken. The bamboo leaves were formed from Old Man Wu Qing's intent realm. Old Man Wu Qing's intent realm was that the world was emotionless. Anything in the world, whether beautiful or ugly, could be fatal. The bamboo leaves were even sharper and more terrifying than divine weapons. Bamboo wind profound. The moment Old Man Wu Qing rushed out, he slashed out with the saber in his hand. The bamboo leaves surrounding the saber were like a terrifying hurricane, blowing up and slamming into the fire Qilin's body. Bang! 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 The fire Qilin was originally fighting against Devour's array, so it naturally did not guard against Old Man Wu Qing. At this moment, the bamboo leaves slammed into its chest, creating a huge flaming hole. The fire Qilin was thoroughly enraged. The fire Qilin roared furiously and pushed its claws forward. Devour was pushed back several thousand steps. Then, the fire Qilin's terrifying flaming eyes stared coldly at Old Man Wu Qing. It opened its mouth and spat out a purple-black pillar of fire at Old Man Wu Qing. Bamboo wall. However, Old Man Wu Qing did not panic. He struck out with his left hand, and huge bamboo phantoms that were as tall and straight as mountains appeared in front of him. They formed a bamboo wall in front of him. The bamboo wall was penetrated by the flames. But Old Man Wu Qing had already appeared behind the fire Qilin. He slashed out with his saber, and the crescent-shaped saber light was wrapped by countless bamboo leaves. It was like the saber light of a bamboo forest swordsman. Bamboo forest blade. Aura. The blade light hit the fire Qilin's back, making it roar in pain. Then, the fire Qilin abandoned Devour and focused on attacking Old Ruthless. For a time, Old Man Wuching was in a rather difficult situation. Good chance. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He knew that Old Man Ruthless was planning on using him as a live target to attract the Fire Qilin's attention, giving him a chance to approach the Fire Qilin. Zhuowen leaped into the air and unfolded the torch dragon wings on his back. His speed reached the level of shrinking the ground as he instantly landed above the Fire Qilin's head. Then he quickly took out a white jade box from his spirit ring and opened the lid, revealing the blue blood of the heavenly way. Perhaps it had sensed the aura of the heavenly Tao blood. The Fire Qilin's body stiffened. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with joy. Taking advantage of the moment the Fire Qilin's body stiffened, he stepped between the Fire Qilin's eyebrows and unceremoniously pressed the disc formation that Old Man Wuching had given him into the Fire Qilin's forehead. Roar! The moment the disc formation entered the Fire Qilin's forehead, the latter roared in pain and swung its huge head. Zhuowen, who was standing between the Fire Qilin's eyebrows, could not help but be thrown out. At the same time, the Fire Qilin's huge beast claw ruthlessly slashed at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's gaze was gloomy as he immediately summoned the king's sword. He used the king's sword to control more than 9,000 ancient swords, forming a dense sword wall around him. Bang! 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 Unfortunately, the Fire Qilin's strength was too strong. The sword wall did not last long before it was instantly broken. Zhuowen had no choice but to use the no-beginning Devil Golden Sword to block in front of him. He even took out the Supreme Dazzling Sunblade to deal with it at any time. Uffed. The no-beginning Devil Golden Sword was instantly broken. Instead, the Supreme Dazzling Sunblade blocked it for 3 breaths of time. Zhuowen also used these 3 breaths of time to immediately leave the Fire Qilin's range with the torch dragon wings. However, Zhuowen's face did not look too good. Because of the Fire Qilin's attack, just now, nearly 1,000 of the 9,000 ancient swords had lost their brilliance and were severely damaged. As for the no-beginning Devil Golden Sword, it was broken into pieces directly and could be considered as completely useless. Zhuowen felt that it was a pity. The no-beginning Devil Golden Sword was refined when he was a real god, and it had always been handy to use. However, he also knew that as his strength increased, the no-beginning Devil Golden Sword would eventually be eliminated. However, he did not expect the no-beginning Devil Golden Sword to be eliminated in such a helpless manner. Moreover, as the no-beginning Devil Golden Sword was broken too thoroughly, even if the broken sword was repaired, its power would not be as strong as before. After keeping the broken sword, Zhuowen kept it in his spiritual ring. After all, it was his trump card back then, and he was prepared to keep it. As for the 1,000 ancient swords, although they were severely damaged, they could still be restored as long as they were repaired. After all, the ancient swords were refined by the ancient sword Sage King, and their quality was much higher than the no-beginning Devil Golden Sword. In the starry sky, the Fire Qilin covered its forehead with its claws and roared continuously as if it had gone mad. Boom! At this moment, under Zhuowen's order, Devour stormed over and mercilessly beat the dog that had fallen into the water. Under Devour's stormy attacks, the Fire Qilin retreated little by little. The flames on its body became dimmer, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. Bang! Devour's claw hit the Fire Qilin's face. The latter screamed and fell to the ground, gasping for its last breath. At the same time, a disc array slowly flew out from the Fire Qilin's forehead. For drops of dark blue liquid floated above the disc array. Heavenly Path blood. Zhuowen's eyes brightened. He quickly approached the Fire Qilin and waved his right hand, grabbing the disc array. Without the Heavenly Path's rules, the Fire Qilin's power was not as strong as before. Under Devour's attack, it scattered in the starry sky. Kid, according to our agreement, you have to give me half of the heavenly path blood. Old Ruthless hurried over and said. Zhuowen did not say anything. He took out 2 drops of heavenly path blood and gave them to Old Ruthless. Then he sized up the black-clothed Zhuowen. At that moment, the black-clothed Zhuowen's aura was much stronger than before he had survived the fire. Moreover, the black-clothed Zhuowen's eyes would often flash with the light of thunder and fire. It seemed to indicate that his body contained the 2 extreme energies of extreme fire and extreme thunder at the same time. Finally, I've reached real God extreme fire. Only real God extreme wind is left. Then I'll be able to reach the 3 extreme realms. Zhuowen's eyes revealed joy as he muttered excitedly, Kid, you have to keep the heavenly path blood well. Wait until your cultivation reaches Void Sky 8 steps. Then you'll know how useful the heavenly path blood is to you. Old Man Wuqing approached Zhuowen and looked at the 2 drops of heavenly Tao blood in Zhuowen's hand with a burning gaze. Zhuowen shrugged and suddenly said, What if I use the heavenly path blood now? Old Ruthless looked at Zhuowen as though he was looking at an idiot. He said, Kid, do you want to die? The heavenly path is a rule that surpasses the rules of Starry Sky. You haven't even grasped the rules of Starry Sky completely, and you want to comprehend the rules of heavenly path directly. Aren't you courting death? If you think that your life is too long, you can try using the heavenly path blood. Zhuowen smiled embarrassedly and put the 2 drops of heavenly path blood into the white jade box. He said, Then let me comprehend the rules of Starry Sky thoroughly first. Chapter 2152. 5 Steps in the Void. Sky Zhuowen immediately perked up. Looking at Old Man Wuqing, he asked, What method? Old Man Wuqing grinned and said, I will extract the heavenly Tao principles from the heavenly Tao blood, and you will be able to absorb the heavenly Tao blood's energy. This old man can see that you have already reached the peak of the 4th step in the Void Sky realm. If you can absorb a drop of the heavenly Tao blood's energy, breaking through to the 5th step should be more than enough. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He knew that this old man Wuqing wouldn't think for him. Sure enough, he was aiming for the heavenly Tao principles in the heavenly Tao blood. A drop of heavenly Tao blood shouldn't be much to you, right? After all, you have the heavenly Tao blood left behind by the Lu Ocean. Moreover, you have 2 drops of heavenly Tao blood from the fire Qilin. Old Man Wuqing continued fanning the flames. Zhuowen pondered for a moment, then nodded. All right. Old Man Wuqing revealed a happy smile and said, Ha, that's right. This old man will definitely help you break through to the 5th step in the Void Sky realm. Looking at Old Man Wuqing's smile, Zhuowen felt as if he had boarded a pirate ship. Old man, according to what you said, can I absorb a few more drops of heavenly Tao blood? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Old Man Wuqing sneered and said, If you don't want to die, you can absorb a few more drops. Under the 8th step in the Void Sky realm, absorbing 1 drop is already dangerous. If you absorb too much, it's simply courting death. If you want to die, you can try. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. Then he smiled embarrassedly and said, Forget it. The fire Qilin disappeared, and Devour returned to his human form, landing not far from Zhuowen. The Heavenly Demon Island's defensive array was also retracted. Magatama brought the Mara to Zhuowen's side, sizing up the black-clothed Zhuowen behind him, and said, Shuoxiaoyu, is this clone of yours Devour? Zhuowen wasn't surprised that Magatama recognized Devour. He admitted it openly. Shuoxiaoyu, you're really lucky. Devour is a strong race in the Starry Sky, a race that surpasses the Starry Sky giant beasts. Their innate talents are much stronger than the human clan. I didn't expect you to have such a clone. Awesome. Mara couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Zhuowen scratched his head and smiled. I'm lucky. Since Devour was still a child, I succeeded in seizing his body. Magatama and Mara nodded. They all knew that Devour's god soul was much stronger than the human clans. It was impossible for Zhuowen to possess Devour's body. However, it was much more reasonable to take over the body of an infant. Zhuowen Motian. And the others discussed for a while, and they even talked about Ling Binbing's information. After finding out that Ling Binbing had already contacted the remaining 7 of the 10 great sects, Zhuowen's eyes turned even colder. Of course, which of the 7 sects that Ling Binbing contacted would send a crusade against Zhuowen? The scouts that Mo Tian sent out didn't find out any specific information. According to Magatama's estimation, Ling Binbing would bring the ancestors of the other sects here in 1 or 2 months. Of course, Magatama had tampered with the ancient teleport formation in the Heavenly Demon Island. The ancient teleport formations in other places couldn't be used here. They could only use the spaceships. Thus, Zhuowen still had 1 or 2 months. During this time, I'd better reach the 5th virtual sky realm. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, then looked at Old Ruthless. The latter nodded in understanding. In a dark room with a blue light, Zhuowen sat cross-legged on a lotus seat. A drop of blue blood floated above his right palm. Old man, help me extract the Heavenly Tao's principle from the Heavenly Tao blood. Zhuowen looked at the dwarf old man, who was shorter than him. Got it. Extracting the Heavenly Tao's principle requires extreme care. I'm afraid it will take a month. While I'm extracting the Heavenly Tao's principle, you can absorb the Heavenly Tao blood that has lost its Heavenly Tao's principle. Old Ruthless said indifferently. Then he formed a seal with both hands. An invisible force appeared in the surroundings. Instantly, the drop of Heavenly Tao blood in Zhuowen's palm flew up into the air, floating quietly. Then, 5 blue rays of light shot out from the 5 fingers of Old Ruthless' right hand. They circled around the blue drop of blood, forming strange and unpredictable patterns. Immediately after, Zhuowen discovered that the power of law contained in the drop of blood was like the outer shell of corn. It slowly peeled off and adhered to the surface of the patterns formed by the blue rays of light. However, this kind of power of law was too fine. It was probably less than 1/10,000th of the power of law in the drop of blood. Old Ruthless' expression was focused as he patiently extracted the power of law from the Heavenly Tao blood. Moreover, every time he extracted the power of law, he would filter out that portion of the Heavenly Tao blood and give it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at the blue blood that was only 1/10,000th of the drop of blood in front of him. After hesitating for a moment, he absorbed it into his body. A rumble rang out in Zhuowen's head. Then Zhuowen felt all the blood in his body move. An unprecedentedly powerful energy filled his limbs and bones, causing all the hairs on his body to stand on end. What powerful energy! Just 1/10,000th of the Heavenly Tao blood actually has such powerful energy. It looks like Old Ruthless didn't lie to me. If I completely absorb that drop of Heavenly Tao blood, the abundant energy will be enough for me to reach the 5th step of the illusory sky realm. Zhuowen thought joyfully. Time slowly passed. A month passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, a blazing purple light erupted from Zhuowen's room. Then, a gigantic illusory sky bridge appeared in the sky above the pavilion that Zhuowen was in. Someone's about to break through. Many cultivators on Heavenly Devil Island noticed the illusory sky bridge that stretched across the horizon, and they revealed astonished expressions. The reason for this was because they felt that this illusory sky bridge was a little too big, and it was more than a few times larger than an ordinary illusory sky bridge. That's Brothers was illusory sky bridge. It looks like Brother Joie is about to reach the fifth step of the illusory sky realm. It's so fast. Mo Fan raised his head and recognized that the illusory sky bridge was in the direction of Zhuowen's pavilion. He couldn't help but feel shocked. "Senior brother, let's go and take a look together." A beautiful figure flashed across the sky above Mo Fan's cave. Mo Fan quickly chased after her and said, "Junior Sister Yushan, wait for me." Di Ling, Zhang Jiqing, and the others, as well as Magatama and Emoji, were all alarmed by the illusory sky bridge. They all rushed toward the pavilion that Zhuowen was in. Zhuowen flew out of the pavilion and stepped on the illusory sky bridge. He walked up step by step and finally stopped at the fourth step. Fifth step of the illusory sky realm, creating all things. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the fifth step. It was said that cultivators who reached the fifth step of the illusory sky realm had the power to create all things. It was as if they were the creator of the world. However, there was a huge difference between the creator of the world and the real creator of the world. The real creator of the world could create something out of nothing. On the other hand, cultivators who reached the fifth step of the illusory sky realm could only create simple life forms. They couldn't create humans or space beasts at all. Of course, cultivators who reached the fifth step of the illusory sky realm could create a pseudo-life planet. However, it was slightly weaker than a real-life planet. The humans inside it couldn't cultivate at all. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with confidence. He took a step forward and stepped on the fifth step, completely lighting up the dim fifth step. Chapter 2153. The wind blows before the storm such powerful strength. He just advanced to the fifth step of the void sky realm, and the aura he is revealing isn't any weaker than the seventh step of the void sky realm. He is truly a freak. Mo Tian muttered with a fearful gaze. This should be related to the fact that his doppelganger is Devour. After all, his doppelganger should have subtly influenced his original body, making his original body much stronger than ordinary cultivators. Emoji said. Magatama nodded. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly narrowed. "Old ancestor, what's wrong?" Emoji noticed that Magatama's expression was strange and asked, "The scouts at the border sent news that Ling Binbing has returned. It is said that 6 sects have come with him. This time," Magatama said in a deep voice. 6 sects. It seems that all the other sects have come except for Half Moon Hall. Emoji's expression changed slightly. "Open the defensive array," Magatama said, and made a hand seal, ordering the disciples of the sect to preside over the defensive array. Zhuowen also noticed the abnormality. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge and flew towards Magatama, asking, "Senior, what happened?" "Ling Binbing has returned. Besides Half Moon Hall, the other 6 sects have also sent people. I'm afraid this matter is going to be a little tricky," Magatama said in a deep voice. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and sneered in his heart. In fact, he had long known that apart from Half Moon Hall and Heavenly Demon Island, the other 8 sects would target him. He had already destroyed the Dark Illusion sect and High Heaven sect on his trip to Dongyu, but he still could not intimidate the remaining 6 sects. So don't blame him, Zhuowen, for being ruthless. Xiaoyu, I think you should run away first. Although not all the old ancestors of the 6 sects have come, according to the news from the scouts, at least 3 old ancestors have been persuaded by Ling Binbing to come, Magatama advised. Which 3? Zhuowen asked. Magatama shook his head and said, "I'm not sure." Zhuowen pondered for a moment and said, "Senior, I plan to stay here first. I need to know which 3 ancestors stayed behind, so that my next plan can be carried out successfully." Magatama shook his head helplessly and said, "This is too risky. In fact, you can completely escape the star field. There's no need to fight with those sects head-on. After all, the forces by your side are not small. None of the 10 great sects can take you down. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said, Senior, in my hometown, there is a common saying, when you face a ferocious beast that is stronger than you, you cannot retreat. The more you retreat, the more the ferocious beast will take advantage of you. In the end, it will attack you endlessly. Magatama was stunned. What Zhuowen said was not unreasonable, and he had nothing to say. They're here. Magatama raised his head and noticed several streams of light in the distance and sighed softly. He knew that it was too late for Zhuowen to leave now. However, Zhuowen was not depressed at all. Instead, he looked at the streams of light that stopped outside Heavenly Demon Island's starry sky with bright eyes. These were 6 extremely huge airships, each of which was dozens of times larger than the divine armament Zhuowen obtained in the past. Universe Sect, Void Cleansing Peak, Demon Pearl Sect, Qi Refining Sword Sect, White Jade Pavilion, and Flower Butterfly Valley. Zhuowen looked at the symbols on the 6 airships and read out the names of the forces they belonged to word by word, his voice low and filled with killing intent. From the 6 airships, more than a dozen figures walked out, 4 of them standing at the front. One of them was not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. It was High Heaven Sect's old ancestor, Ling Binbing. The other 3 figures were 2 men and a woman. One of them was a white-haired Taoist priest. One of them was a middle-aged man with golden eyes. And the last one was a beautiful young woman who wore a dress with a dancing butterfly pattern. Although Zhuowen did not know these 3 people, he could guess their identities at a glance. The white-haired Taoist priest should be Void, Cleansing Peak's old ancestor. Fu Yu's, the middle-aged man with golden eyes, should be Universe Sect's old ancestor. Chen Chongsheng and the beautiful young woman should be Demon Pearl Sect's old ancestor. Yang Zhonghui. The reason Zhuowen could guess their identities was naturally because the 3 people standing behind them were Void Cleansing Peak's sect master, Fu Feiping, Universe Sect's sect master, Qin Yongzhang, and Demon Pearl Sect's sect master, Yang Muqiu. That bitch Yang Muqiu actually has the face to come to Heavenly Demon Island. Mo.Ji's eyes were gloomy as he looked at Yang Muqiu standing behind Yang Zhonghui. Back then, their Heavenly Demon Island's demonic Tao scripture was stolen because of Yang Muqiu. Moreover, Yang Muqiu had also deceived Mo.Ji's feelings. It could be said that Mo.Ji's hatred for Yang Muqiu was extremely deep. Yang Muqiu obviously saw Mo.Ji's hostility, and a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of her mouth, but she did not pay much attention to him. Fu Yu's, Qin Chongsheng, and Yang Zhonghui all looked at Ling Binbing. Ling Binbing nodded knowingly and slowly walked out. He saw Zhuowen next to Magatama at a glance and said coldly, "Brother Magatama, you protected a thief and destroyed my High Heaven sect. Do you know your crime?" "No, my ass." "Ling Binbing, who do you think you are? Do you have the right to judge me? If you're not convinced, come over here and let's spar." Mo Tian unexpectedly burst out with vulgarities, which caused Ling Binbing's expression to turn unsightly and ashen from anger. "You've got guts. Today, the 6 great sects are all here. If your Heavenly Demon Island doesn't want to be destroyed, you'd better hand over Zhuowen." Ling Binbing left behind a ruthless statement, but he didn't rush up to fight with Mo Tian. Although Ling Binbing and Magatama were both cultivators at the 8 Steps Void Heaven realm, Ling Binbing admitted that he was no match for Magatama, who was a demonic cultivator, in a real fight. Just a coward. Devil Sky snorted coldly with disdain, and then he looked at Fu Yu's group of 3 and said, "The 3 of you are the ancestors of a sect at any rate. Are you willing to listen to the orders of this trash, Ling Binbing?" Ling Binbing was so angry that he roared, Magatama, don't go too far. Io, don't be so angry, you two. Young Zhonghui suddenly laughed and broke the deadlock. Actually, we didn't come here to cause trouble for your heavenly demon island. As long as Big Brother Magatama hands over Zhuowen, we will immediately withdraw. As for the grievances between your sect and High Heaven sect, we will definitely not interfere. Junior Sister Yang is right. The grievances between your sects have nothing to do with us. We only want Zhuowen, Chen Changsheng said with a smile. Fu Yuz was a man of few words, nodding and saying, "Hand over Zhuowen." Ling Binbing's face was filled with embarrassment and anger. When he went to their sects to lobby them, these three people smiled at him and promised to help him seek justice. Now that they were on Heavenly Demon Island, they immediately forgot about their promise to him. How could Ling Binbing not be angry? But no matter how unhappy Ling Binbing was, he didn't dare to say anything. He was now all alone. High Heaven sect had been destroyed, and he was now at odds with Heavenly Demon Island. If he angered the three people beside him, he would really have no place in the star field in the future. Magatama frowned slightly and couldn't help but look at Zhuowen beside him, obviously letting Zhuowen make the decision. "Senior, let me handle the rest." Saying so, Zhuowen took the lead and stood at the edge of the protective array. He looked at the higher-ups of the 6 great sects and said, "Your grandpa Zhuo is here. If you have the guts, come and bite me." Chapter 2154. Duel the upper echelons of the 6 great sects all had ugly expressions. They looked at Zhuowen as if they were looking at an idiot. "Zhuowen, do you think you're invincible just because you have an 8th step void, heaven expert backing you?" Chen Changsheng laughed out of extreme anger. Young Zhonghui laughed. "Although there's nothing wrong with being young and impetuous, you're just an ant. Do you really think you have the right to be arrogant in front of us?" Fu Yuz only looked at Zhuowen with a cold smile. Although he didn't say a word, the disdain in his eyes was extremely obvious. "Little bastard, all you can do is bark like a pitiful dog within Heavenly Demon Island's protective array. If you have the guts, then come out. Don't accidentally drag Heavenly Demon Island down with you," Ling Binbing said in an eccentric tone. Many disciples of the Heavenly Devil Island revealed strange expressions. They looked at Magatama and Mara in confusion. Some of them even muttered softly that they shouldn't have let Zhuowen enter the Heavenly Devil Island. Zhuowen knew that Ling Binbing was trying to drive a wedge between him and the Heavenly Devil Island. However, he didn't plan to stay on the Heavenly Devil Island in the first place. "Old bastard, I, Zhuowen, am about to come out and take your dog life. Are you willing to duel with me?" Unexpectedly, not only did Zhuowen not shrink back, he actually raised the condition of fighting Ling Binbing one-on-one. The surroundings were in an uproar as all of them felt that Zhuowen was too arrogant and conceited, and it was even to the extent that he was courting death. Ling Binbing was also stunned. He clearly didn't expect Zhuowen to actually come out and fight him alone. What was the difference between this and suicide? "Old dog, you don't dare?" Zhuowen's indifferent voice sounded again, interrupting Ling Binbing's wild thoughts. "Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Then get out here right now," Ling Binbing sneered. However, Zhuowen didn't move. He said, "You have so many people around you. Who can guarantee that they won't attack when I come out?" "I promise," Ling Binbing replied. "What's the use of your guarantee? You want to fight me one-on-one? Sure, but those fellows beside you had better stay far away. Also, you have to swear to the Heavenly Tao that there will not be a second person interfering with our battle," Zhuowen said. Ling Binbing frowned slightly. Soon after, he looked towards Chen Changsheng and the other two beside him. Clearly, he was seeking their opinions. Chen Changsheng sneered. You want us to stay away? Then what about your servants? I heard from Sect Masterling that you have a servant who is also a Void Sky 8 Steps expert. If your servant interferes when you two are fighting, wouldn't it be very unfair? Zhuowen smiled and sent a message to the King Spirit. The King Spirit then flew behind Zhuowen. He is my servant, the King Spirit. His cultivation has reached the Void Sky 8 Steps. When I fight with Old Dogling, he will also keep a safe distance from me. Also, what is this Old Dogling's cultivation? And what is my cultivation? Why is he so cautious? Is he afraid of me? Zhuowen boasted shamelessly. Ling Binbing was furious in his heart when he heard Zhuowen call him an old dog. He said, "Little bastard, I only need one move to kill you. Even if this servant of yours is by your side, I will still be able to kill you. If you wish to seek death, why don't you come out now?" Zhuowen sneered and ignored Ling Binbing. Instead, he looked at Chen Changsheng and the other two and said, "The three of you, although I have a servant who is at the Void Sky 8 Steps compared to your 6 great sects, the gap is still too big. You came here just for the Heavenly Star essence on me, right? I still have a lot of it. The three of you came all the way here, so please take it as a gift from me." After saying that, Zhuowen threw out 3 jade bottles. Chen Changsheng took them and opened the corks. He found that there were 5 drops of Heavenly Star essence inside. He nodded, and his expression eased a lot. "Little friend Zhua, I will gladly accept this gift, but I heard that you have more Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence than this, right?" Chen Changsheng put away the jade bottle and asked shamelessly. Zhuowen's eyes became colder and colder. He cupped his hands and said, "Of course, I still have a lot of reserves. It's just that there is a big grudge between me and this old dogling. I want to solve the grudge between me and him first. Then I will give you the rest of the Heavenly Star essence. It's just that I am not happy to see this old dog's face." So Ling Binbing was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Zhuowen was really ruthless. "You three, don't listen to this little bastard's nonsense. He must be stalling for time. Maybe he is plotting something," Ling Binbing hurriedly explained, but he was interrupted by Yang Zhonghui. Yang Zhonghui smiled and said, "I think this little brother is very good at dealing with people. Let's wait until the grudge between him and Brother Ling is solved first. Anyway, I have plenty of time." Okay, a person should have a clear mind. The matter of the Heavenly Star essence is not urgent. Zhua Xiaoyu can solve the grudge first. Chen Changsheng laughed. Fu Yuz nodded and did not say anything. "Then thank you very much. This is the territory of the Heavenly Demon Island, so it is not suitable for a battle. Otherwise, it will disturb the cultivators of the Heavenly Demon Island. How about this? Let's go to the ruins of the Serene Illusion sect. It is much more spacious there." Zhuowen grinned. Chen Changsheng and the other two naturally had no objection, but Ling Binbing was so angry that his face turned ashen. Ling Binbing felt very uncomfortable, especially when he saw how quickly Chen Changsheng and the other two changed their faces. Magatama narrowed his eyes and glanced at Zhuowen, revealing a thoughtful expression. "Zhua Xiaoyu, I'll go with you." Magatama rushed to Zhuowen's side and said. Zhuowen shook his head and transmitted his voice to Magatama. "Senior, I think you have also guessed my next plan. I will take my leave now." With that, Zhuowen led Di Ling, Old Man Qing, and the others into the flying ship, turning into a streak of light and disappearing from the Heavenly Demon Island. Meanwhile, Ling Binbing, Chen Changsheng, and the other two led the upper echelons of the 6 great sects and followed closely behind Zhuowen's flying ship, afraid that Zhuowen would do something to escape. While Zhuowen and the others were on their way to the Dark Mirage sect, many cultivators in the Eastern Universe had learned of the duel between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing. Cultivators from all over the Eastern universe had made their way to the old site of the Dark Mirage sect. Several days later, Zhuowen's group arrived at the former site of the Serene Illusion sect. At this moment, the Serene Illusion sect no longer possessed its former prosperity and liveliness. Replacing it was a desolate land filled with weeds. Even many of the smaller organizations around the Serene Illusion sect had moved away due to the disappearance of the Serene Illusion sect. It could be said that the planet where the Serene Illusion sect resided had completely become a dead zone. However, as the news of the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing spread, the dead continent finally gained some life. Many cultivators hurried to the continent long ago and set up camp, waiting for the arrival of Zhuowen and Ling Binbing's group. They're here. That's Zhuowen's flying ship. I've seen it before. There are 6 other flying ships behind it. They belong to the cosmic sect, the Void Rush Peak, and the other sects that have come to the Eastern universe this time. Chapter 2155. Fighting an 8 steps void sky, the flying ship stopped above the ruins of the Dark Illusion sect, and Zhuowen led Di Ling, Old Man Wuqing, and the others off the flying ship. The flying ship of the 6 great sects also stopped near Zhuowen in the next second, and Ling Binbing, Qin Changsheng, Yang Zhonghui, and Fu Yuz led a dozen or so higher-ups down. Zhuo Xiaoyu, I hope you are a man of your word. After you settle your grudge with Sect Master Ling, you'd better obediently hand over the heavenly domain star essence, Qin Changsheng said with a fake smile. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz also looked coldly at Zhuowen. As far as the 3 of them were concerned, Zhuowen would undoubtedly die in this one-on-one battle. Although these words were meant for Zhuowen, they were actually also meant for Ling Binbing. If Zhuowen died, his spirit ring would definitely be taken by Ling Binbing, so the 3 of them were mainly on guard against Ling Binbing escaping with the treasure. Zhuowen didn't reply at all. From the expressions of Qin Changsheng and the other 2, he could tell that they didn't take him seriously at all. Or it could be said that, as far as they were concerned, Zhuowen, would definitely lose this one-on-one battle. The reason why Zhuowen proposed this duel was mainly to test how strong he was now, and whether he had the strength to fight an 8 steps void sky cultivator. Ling Binbing grinned and took a step forward, leaping into the sky above the Dark Illusion sect, looking down at Zhuowen and saying, "Little bastard, come up and die." It's the ancestor of High Heaven sect, Ling Binbing. It seems that the rumors are true. Zhuowen and Ling Binbing are really planning to duel. Is this Zhuowen seeking death? Looking at his aura, he is only at the 5th step void sky, but he dares to challenge an 8th step void sky ancestor? Who knows? Perhaps he really is courting death. There is no suspense in this battle. This Zhuowen will definitely end tragically. Discussions broke out all around. Many of the cultivators who had rushed here looked back and forth between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing. Most of them felt that Zhuowen was courting death. Zhuowen raised his head. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well as he said, "Bastard, who are you calling?" "The bastard is calling you," Ling Binbing said, subconsciously. Zhuowen replied with a smile, "Oh, so it's the bastard calling me." As soon as he said this, Ling Binbing realized that something was wrong. This Zhuowen was indirectly calling him a bastard. "You have a sharp tongue, but only know how to move your mouth. Now that we're at the Dark Mirage sect, you don't dare to come out and fight?" Ling Binbing calmed down and mocked. "On the contrary, I plan to take your dog life today." Zhuowen took a step forward and leaped not far in front of Ling Binbing. "Hee, then you can die." Ling Binbing grinned, his eyes filled with killing intent as he locked onto Zhuowen. Just as he was about to charge at Zhuowen, he was stopped by Zhuowen. "What's wrong? Do you regret fighting with me?" Ling Binbing said coldly. However, Zhuowen ignored Ling Binbing and looked at Qin Yongsheng and the others nearby. Seniors, can you stay 1,000,000 kilometers away from here? Chen Yongsheng and the others exchanged glances and discussed for a while before nodding. They kept their promise and retreated 1,000,000 kilometers away. Tell your men to retreat as well, Ling Binbing said. Zhuowen gestured to the Emperor's spirit. The Emperor's spirit followed Old Man Wu Qing and the others and retreated 1,000,000 kilometers away, silently watching the battle that was about to take place above the Dark Mirage sect. Hee, I'll finish you in one move. At this moment, Ling Binbing did not have any worries. He released his killing intent completely and charged at Zhuowen like a ferocious beast. Before the person arrived, the fist was already a step ahead. Ling Binbing was worthy of being called an eighth-step void sky expert. His fist energy condensed into an incomparably huge lightning domain. The terrifying lightning tribulation of the immortal world rumbled as it struck down. Each bolt was as thick as a giant dragon, as expected of an expert of the 8 steps void sky. This fist is so terrifying. That's the power of the thunder punishment of the immortal world. Any one of the thunderbolts can consign me to eternal damnation. Many of the onlooking cultivators looked at the shocking scene in the sky. Their hearts trembled, and their pupils shrank to the size of needles. They were even more in awe of Ling Binbing. Zhuowen grasped the void with his right hand, and the glorious purple galaxy sword appeared in his hand. He slashed out with the sword, and the void distorted and trembled, almost collapsing. The sword light turned into a huge illusory domain, which was no smaller than the thunder punishment of the immortal world. This move was the 6th move of the Tao of Destruction sword art, the Heavenly Tao domain. It had a powerful force that could uproot mountains. Boom, boom. The thunder punishment of the immortal world was very powerful. The Heavenly Tao domain only lasted for 3 breaths of time before it completely dissipated. Zhuowen was not afraid at all. He grabbed the void with his left hand, and dense purple energy gushed out, condensing into a slender purple sword. With the 2 swords in hand, Zhuowen's entire body was like a spinning top as he continuously danced in the air. The 2 swords were like water ripples as they followed Zhuowen's movements. Beams of sword light shot out from the 2 swords, shattering the lightning bolts one after another. When Zhuowen destroyed the last thunderbolt, the thunder punishment of the immortal world completely collapsed, and Ling Binbing's fist energy also completely disappeared. He blocked it. This Zhuowen is very strong. He's only at the 5 steps void sky realm, but he actually blocked the attack of the 8 steps void sky realm. Everyone looked at the white-clothed youth and couldn't help but discuss. We've underestimated this kid. No wonder he dared to challenge Ling Binbing. It turns out that he's this strong. Millions of miles away, Chen Changsheng frowned slightly. He was slightly surprised that Zhuowen could actually block Ling Binbing's fist. This kid is indeed a little unusual. However, the gap between the 5 steps void sky realm and the 8 steps void sky realm is very big. Moreover, Ling Binbing just casually attacked. If Ling Binbing was serious, Zhuowen would have already fallen. Yang Zhonghui smiled. Fu Yuz, who was silent, spoke for the first time. Let's discuss how to distribute the heavenly domain starry sky essence. Zhuowen is definitely going to die. Even if he doesn't die, I don't plan to let him live. However, that old man Ling Binbing might have some devious ideas. Yang Zhonghui and Chen Changsheng both revealed serious expressions. Yang Zhonghui said, "Be wary of Ling Binbing. After Zhuowen is killed by Ling Binbing, we'll immediately act and seal off the surroundings to prevent Ling Binbing from escaping. With the strength of the 3 of us, Ling Binbing won't dare to escape alone." Brother Yang's words are reasonable. Ling Binbing's strength isn't considered strong among the old ancestors of the 8 great sects, and he doesn't have a secondary heaven-shattering divine artifact. How can he compare to us? If he wants to take it all for himself, he's just courting death. Yang Zhonghui sneered. I hope Ling Binbing can be a little smarter. Fu Yuz nodded and said solemnly, Look, Ling Binbing should be getting serious. This Zhuowen shouldn't be able to live for much longer. Yang Zhonghui suddenly said. Fu Yuz and Chen Changsheng both looked up. They saw that in the sky above the Serene Illusion sect, the moment Zhuowen broke Ling Binbing's fist, Ling Binbing attacked again. Chapter 2156. Real God of Thunder and Fire. Ling Binbing instantly appeared in front of Zhuowen and swung the awl in his right hand mercilessly. The awl streaked across the void and formed dense green lightning arcs. Zhuowen raised the glorious purple galaxy sword in his right hand to block the green lightning awl. Boom! However, the moment the divine sword and the awl collided, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the dense green lightning on the surface of the awl was like maggots that followed the glorious purple galaxy sword and entered Zhuowen's body. The green lightning was extremely terrifying. After entering Zhuowen's body, it went straight into his spiritual space and tried to destroy his spiritual soul. Zhuowen's spiritual soul was extremely strong. The moment the green lightning entered his spiritual space, it was annihilated by his powerful spiritual soul. Ling Binbing also noticed that Zhuowen's expression did not change and was surprised. The green lightning on his awl was not ordinary. It was a strange lightning that targeted the spiritual soul. Most of the cultivators who fought with him for the first time would be caught off guard, and their spiritual soul would be struck by the green lightning, revealing a painful expression. However, Zhuowen was expressionless, as if the green lightning did not affect him at all. Boom! Boom! Ling Binbing snorted and swung the green lightning all at Zhuowen at an extremely fast speed. The terrifying green lightning surrounded the two of them, blurring their figures. Zhuowen kept retreating and was completely at a disadvantage. Die! Ling Binbing's right hand tightened, and the green lightning all smashed down. The green lightning reached the sky and turned into a lightning pillar, blocking Ling Binbing's back. Ling Binbing used almost all of his strength in this attack and smashed heavily on the glorious purple galaxy sword. Puchi! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked to find that the glorious purple galaxy sword in his hand could not withstand this attack and was completely shattered. You're finished. Seeing the glorious purple galaxy sword in Zhuowen's hand shattering, Ling Binbing became even more proud. He raised the green lightning all again and smashed it down. This attack was even more terrifying than the previous one. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He waved his right hand and took out the king's sword. Holding it, he also smashed it on the green lightning awl. Boom! A gust of wind rose between the two of them. The stars in the surrounding starry sky moved like a dream, and colorful light appeared. He blocked it. This guy, Ling Binbing Binbing's Binbing, his God Sword Art editor, Transin Green, his art of green lightning all, and swept it towards Zhuowen's chest. Zhuowen took several steps back and stabbed his imperial sword into the ground. He performed a series of hand seals, and beams of sword light poured out from his back. More than 9,000 ancient swords shot out again, heading straight for Ling Binbing. Ling Binbing's pupils constricted. He brandished the azure thunder, all to block the attacks of the swords as he retreated. Green lightning galaxy. Ling Binbing let out a low roar, and the green lightning all in his hand suddenly scattered out. Terrifying green lightning actually swept out like raindrops, and each of the green lightning bolts manifested into an incomparably huge green lightning star. The densely packed green lightning planets actually formed a small galaxy that revolved around Ling Binbing, blocking the attacks of the swords. However, when Ling Binbing used the green lightning galaxy. An ominous feeling rose in his heart. Whoosh! Suddenly, two divine swords flew out from beneath Ling Bingbing's feet. One of the two swords was suffused with black lightning, while the other was surging with purple flames. They were both filled with a dense and powerful aura. The two swords were extremely fast. They stabbed towards Ling Bingbing's feet, as if they wanted to pierce through Ling Bingbing's entire body. Extreme Dao Fire Sword and Extreme Dao Thunder Sword. Ling Bingbing's pupils shrank. His feet moved in a profound manner as he hurriedly dodged. However, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He knew clearly that only real God, Lei Hua, could unleash the two extreme Dao divine swords at the same time. The so-called real God, Lei Hua, was a powerful real God who had obtained the two extreme energies of extreme Dao fire and extreme Dao thunder at the same time. Legend had it that a real God who had achieved 3 extreme Dao realms had a powerful strength comparable to Void's Sky 9 steps. However, a real God who had achieved 3 extreme Dao realms had never appeared before. However, a real God Lei Hua had appeared, and this person was Purple Star Monarch. After Purple Star Monarch became a real God, Lei Hua, his fighting strength was heaven-defying. He was actually not weaker than Void's Sky 8 steps. He was a figure that the top 10 sects were extremely wary of. However, now, Ling Bingbing actually saw the two extreme energies of Extreme Dao Fire Sword and Extreme Dao Thunder Sword again. Other than Purple Star Monarch, who else in the great Brahma sky domain had reached the level of real God, Lei Hua? Just as Ling Bingbing's thoughts were running wild, a palm silently appeared behind Ling Bingbing. Then, a palm suddenly blasted out. Ling Bingbing's expression changed slightly. Without even looking back, he threw the green lightning all in his hand behind him. Rumble! The green lightning exploded. The palm actually took the green lightning all head-on, without dodging. Dang! 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 Ling Bingbing's expression changed slightly. He only felt an extremely vast force bombarding the green lightning all. Then, his right hand became extremely numb. He couldn't help but retreat continuously. Only then did he see the true face of the cultivator who had sneaked an attack on him. The person who had appeared in front of him was a man who was shrouded in demonic fog. Ling Bingbing took a closer look and realized that the man's face was 90% similar to Zhuowen's. Rumor has it that Zhuowen has a doppelganger. Could this guy be that guy's doppelganger? That's impossible. This guy's doppelganger is actually the real god, Lei Hua. As Ling Bingbing retreated, he waved the green lightning all in his hand. The surrounding green lightning stars that were densely packed shot towards the black-clothed Zhuowen. The black-clothed Zhuowen held the supreme fire sword in his right hand and the supreme thunder sword in his left. With a twist of his waist, he shot forward like a whirlwind. The Lei Hua swords in his hands spun rapidly as his body spun. The light of thunder and fire exploded with a frightening brilliance as he spun. All the green lightning stars that shot towards him were actually blown to smithereens. Damn it! This guy has hidden himself really well. Ling Bingbing's expression changed slightly. With a roar, he raised his aura to the peak. Then, the green lightning all blasted out without holding back. Bolts of green lightning appeared around Ling Bingbing like pillars, making him seem like the reincarnation of the thunder god. In an instant, Ling Bingbing and the black-clothed Zhuowen engaged in a great battle. Under the encirclement of countless green lightning stars, it was as if they had entered a no-man's land. They constantly collided, bombarded, and flew. The battle between the two was basically evenly matched. Countless cracks appeared on the entire planet where the gloomy illusion sect was located. It trembled terrifyingly. as if the entire planet would collapse at any moment. Many of the spectating cultivators that had gathered on the planet fled the planet. There were even some unlucky cultivators who were directly blown to smithereens by the shockwaves of the battle because they were too close. Zhuowen's original body took a step forward. Over 9,000 ancient swords revolved around him like an upside-down waterfall, forming a storm of swordlight. Then he joined the battle as well. The ancient swords in the storm of swordlight were all forged by the ancient sword Saint King. They had followed the ancient sword Saint King for countless years in the past. It was easy to imagine how powerful they were. Chapter 2157, Blood Thunder Prison. This kid actually has such a powerful clone. If I'm not wrong, that clone uses the two extreme energies of extreme lightning and extreme fire. Is that a true god of lightning and fire? Chen Changsheng, who had been watching the battle, couldn't help but stand up. His gaze was solemn as he looked at the distant battle. It wasn't just Chen Changsheng, Yang Zhonghui, and Fu Yuz were similarly shocked. Among them, Yang Zhonghui muttered in a low voice. No wonder Zhuowen was so confident in challenging Ling Binbing to a duel. It turns out that he has a clone of the true god of thunder and fire. If that's the case, it will be somewhat difficult for Ling Binbing to defeat him. Fu Yu sneered. It's not just difficult. The chances of him losing are probably even higher. After all, even his original body has joined in. If they work together, Ling Binbing is already one of the weakest ancestors of the 10 great sections. It'll be very difficult for him to win this time. Chen Changsheng suddenly transmitted his voice. Looks like we can't just sit by and watch. According to our agreement with Sect Master Ling, this kid Zhuowen must die. Although this Zhuowen knows how to conduct himself and is very tactful, we've already made an agreement with Sect Master Ling and established a contract. This kid can't be left alive. We were careless. Let's wait first. It's not appropriate for us to make a move now. That Ling Binbing still has a trump card that he hasn't used. If he uses that trump card and still fails to kill this Zhuowen, we'll make a move. Fu Yuz replied. I agree with Brother Fu. Although the four of us have an agreement, this Ling Binbing can't just sit there and do nothing. Let the three of us go together. After Ling Binbing uses his trump card, we'll see how things go, Yang Zhonghui said. Seeing that Fu Yuz and Yang Zhonghui were not in a hurry to make a move, Chen Changsheng could only give up. He said indifferently, then let's just wait and see. Bang, bang, bang. As the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing grew more and more intense, the surrounding space within a radius of 5 million kilometers collapsed. The planet that the Dark Mirage sect was on had long been reduced to dust by the shockwaves from their battle, and the spectating cultivators had to retreat again and again. Suddenly, everyone discovered a terrifying scarlet light erupting from the battlefield. This light was like blood. It was incomparably bright, and the surrounding starry sky was dyed blood red by this light. Within this scarlet light, an extremely terrifying aura spread out. All the cultivators who felt this aura felt their hearts tighten, as if their hearts were being ruthlessly pulled. Ling Binbing has used his trump card. Zhuowen is most likely going to be defeated. Chen Changsheng said with a burning gaze. Yang Zhonghui nodded and said that Zhuowen was able to force Ling Binbing to use his trump card. He's really not simple. Although he lost this time, it's still an honorable defeat, but Fu Yuz laughed coldly and continued, however, we definitely have to kill this kid completely. This kid's void sky 5 steps, and in addition to real god Lei Hua's split body, he already has the ability to threaten the 10 great sections. If this kid is given enough time, I'm afraid we might not be able to suppress him. Before this kid grows up, we have to kill him. The scarlet light grew brighter and brighter. Then, two figures flew out from the center of the scarlet light in quite a sorry state. They barely managed to stabilize themselves 1,000,000 miles away. These two figures were Zhuowen's original body and his split body, who were dressed in white. Zhuowen's eyes squinted, and he looked extremely solemn. At first, Ling Binbing was originally suppressed by him. However, for some unknown reason, the old man took out a palm-sized scarlet crystal from his spiritual ring. Ling Binbing crushed the scarlet crystal, and an intense scarlet light burst out from it. It was also filled with an extremely pungent smell of blood. The scarlet light was filled with extremely vast energy. Zhuowen was careless, and he was hit by the power of the scarlet light. He couldn't help but fly out with a pale face. The scarlet light that spread out was extremely fast. In an instant, it enveloped the surrounding starry sky of tens of millions of miles. Then, the scarlet light transformed into strange red lines that intertwined with the starry sky of tens of millions of miles, forming an extremely huge scarlet prison. Because the red lines were too dense, and the strange red lines had the ability to block out divine, since the cultivators outside had no idea what was happening inside the prison. Because Zhuowen was the closest to Ling Binbing, and the scarlet light was too fast, Zhuowen was unquestionably trapped in the red prison. Ling Binbing's scarlet lightning prison is extraordinary. If Ling Binbing used this move on me, I would probably have to take out a sub-heaven-shattering divine artifact to deal with it. Then, Zhuowen's chances of survival aren't high, Qin Changsheng commented indifferently. At this moment, countless bolts of blood lightning gathered in the core area of the scarlet lightning prison. In the core area, a figure slowly walked over. This person was surrounded by dense bolts of blood lightning. At first glance, he looked like he was wearing a sinister blood-red armor. "Little bastard, you force me to use the bloody thunder hell. Well done. Don't worry, as a reward, I won't kill you right away. I'll capture you and use all the torture methods in the world on you." This person was Ling Binbing. In this scarlet lightning prison, Ling Binbing's power was far greater than it had been before. In the past, Ling Binbing was only slightly stronger than a king spirit. Now, however, he was much stronger than a king spirit. He was very close to Old Man Ruthless. Ling Binbing, however, did not feel happy at all. The Bloody Thunder Prison was his trump card, and he only had one piece of the scarlet crystal that created the Bloody Thunder Prison. Furthermore, it took him 100,000 years and many precious medicines and resources to get that one piece. Originally, Ling Binbing's Blood Thunder Prison was enough to put him on the same level as Qin Changsheng and the other sect masters who had secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts. However, now that he had used the Blood Thunder Prison ahead of time, he was probably going to be inferior. What was more hateful was that if Ling Binbing wanted to recreate the red crystal, he would have to spend another 100,000 years, and there was no guarantee that he would succeed. Therefore, Ling Binbing hated Zhuowen to the core. Sizzle! Ling Binbing waved his right hand, and the area where Zhuowen was immediately filled with countless blood lightning bolts that attacked him. Zhuowen immediately tried to dodge and block, but it was no use. The bolts of blood lightning were too dense. In particular, his main body was much weaker than his clone, and there were many hideous wounds on his body from the blood lightning. Zhuowen had no choice but to put the original body into devour space. Then, he let the black-clothed Zhuowen resist the bolts of blood lightning alone. "Your clone is not bad. It is Thunderfire, true god. But even Thunderfire, true god, will have to die in my scarlet lightning prison." Ling Binbing laughed cruelly. He performed a spell with his right hand. Suddenly, the bolts of blood lightning became denser and denser. It looked like they were going to blow Zhuowen into pieces. Zhuowen took a deep breath, and said coldly, "You forced me to do this. I didn't want to reveal my original body, but now I have to." Ling Binbing was stunned. Apparently, he did not understand what Zhuowen meant. But soon he understood. The demonic mist around Zhuowen's clone began to roll violently. Chapter 2158. One human and one beast. The demonic fog churned at an extremely fast speed. Soon after, an extremely huge and frightening beast charged out from the churning demonic fog. This giant beast was so huge that when it stood up, it actually reached the top of the Blood Thunder Prison, causing the Blood Thunder Prison to tremble violently. Ling Binbing was frightened, looking at the giant beast in front of him. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Is that Devour? This guy's real body is Devour?" As he spoke, Ling Binbing slowly retreated, his face gloomy to the extreme. When Zhuowen's clone was Thunderfire True God, Shi Yin thought that it would be tough to deal with him. However, he had never thought that it wasn't the real power of this man's clone. Without a doubt, Devour's real body was much stronger than before. Moreover, Devour had the two extreme powers, the extreme fire and extreme lightning, which made him even tougher to deal with. Boom. Unfortunately, Devour didn't give Ling Binbing more time to think. It roared and stormed over. Its massive claws seemed to be able to tear apart everything in this world. The dense blood lightning in the Blood Thunder Prison hit Devour, but it didn't affect him at all. It was like scratching an itch. Ling Binbing raised the blue lightning all in his hand. However, it wasn't releasing the blue lightning anymore. It was the blood lightning, which was much stronger than the blue lightning all. Boom! The sharp claws heavily smashed onto the awl, producing a terrifying muffled sound that resembled the roar of thunder. Ling Binbing let out a muffled groan. He only felt that the awl that he was holding with both hands was being pressed down by an incomparably huge mountain. The awl almost slipped out of his hands, and Ling Binbing himself retreated continuously. "Damn it! Back off!" Ling Binbing roared angrily and clenched the awl in his hand tightly. A dazzling scarlet light burst out from the awl, and the blood thunder rushed out like a swarm of locusts. His originally retreating figure finally stopped. Rumble! Instantly, the terrifying energy burst out from Ling Binbing's body, blowing away Devour's sharp claws. Devour couldn't help but take several steps backward. Ling Binbing's Blood Thunder Prison is really amazing. He can use the power of the entire Blood Thunder territory to resist Devour. However, this Blood Thunder Prison is like a secret technique, so it should have a time limit. Zhuowen's real body in Devour's body was calmly analyzing the situation. Although he was surprised by Ling Binbing's power, he didn't mind it. With Devour's current competence, although he couldn't subdue Ling Binbing, he could consume Ling Binbing's energy continuously. Once the bloody thunder hell reached its limit, Ling Binbing would eventually become a fish on his chopping board, at his mercy. Boom, boom. Thinking of this, Devour's attacks became fiercer. Like a storm, his attacks fell on Ling Binbing. At the same time, Ling Binbing didn't show any weakness. With the mighty power of the Blood Thunder Prison, he was evenly matched with Devour. However, if one took a closer look, they could see that Ling Binbing was still in a disadvantageous position. After all, as time passed, the power of the Blood Thunder Prison was weakening. On the other hand, Devour was getting fiercer. Outside the Blood Thunder Prison, countless cultivators were watching the massive blood-red barrier in silence. Many of them tried to send out their divine senses to check the situation inside the Blood Thunder Prison. Although they couldn't see what was inside the Blood Thunder Prison, they could hear the terrifying roars of beasts coming from the Blood Thunder Prison. They could also hear the fierce collisions and the figures fighting inside. Everyone knew that the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing had reached its climax. It was a battle at the 8 steps void sky level, which was a rare sight. Many cultivators were itching to see it. Chen Changsheng, Yang Zhonghui, and Fu Yu's frowned. Chen Changsheng said in a deep voice, "It's been more than 1 hour. Why hasn't the battle ended yet?" As far as Chen Changsheng and the others were concerned, Ling Bingbing's strength had greatly increased after displaying the blood lightning prison. He should be able to easily suppress and defeat Zhuo Wen. However, more than 1 hour had passed, and the battle inside the Blood Thunder prison still hadn't stopped. Instead, it was getting more and more intense. This made the 3 of them surprised by Zhuo Wen's strength. It seems that we have underestimated Zhuo Wen. Even Ling Bingbing, who displayed the Blood Thunder prison, couldn't take him down. "This is really beyond my expectations," Fu Yu said with a gloomy expression. Chen Changsheng nodded. The coldness in his eyes became even more intense. He said, "This kid can't be left alive. If Ling Bingbing really can't kill him this time, the 3 of us will take action and kill him." Crack! Suddenly, the surface of the Blood Thunder prison, which spanned tens of millions of miles across the starry sky, suddenly became densely packed with cracks. Moreover, the cracks became denser and more terrifying. A force that could collapse the starry sky soared into the sky from the Blood Thunder prison. Some unlucky cultivators who were close didn't expect the Blood Thunder prison to collapse at all. The moment they approached the Blood Thunder prison, they were swept in by the terrifying collapsing force. Not even their bones were left behind. The Blood Thunder prison has shattered. Is the battle over? The other onlookers who originally intended to approach the Bloody Thunder prison, after seeing the cultivators who were swept away by the collapsing power, they all moved away in embarrassment, but their eyes were fixed on the Bloody Thunder prison that was beginning to shatter. Chen Changsheng and the other 2 also stared at the Blood Thunder prison with solemn expressions. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. Rumble! The Blood Thunder prison had completely collapsed. Then, everyone discovered that within the Blood Thunder prison, a huge beast that was tens of millions of miles long was lying in the center of the countless fragments of the Blood Thunder prison. Bang! At the same time, an extremely wretched figure was directly blasted out of the ground. Everyone looked over and found that the embarrassed figure wasn't someone else. It was Ling Bingbing, who had just performed the terrifying Blood Thunder prison. At this moment, Ling Bingbing was covered in blood. His aura was weak, and he was lying in the void. His limbs drooped powerlessly, and he could only move slowly. His limbs were crippled. Everyone turned their heads to look, and discovered that the gigantic beast was also wounded in many places. 60% of its scales had been ripped open, revealing its incomparably blood-red flesh. However, unlike Ling Bingbing, who was like a dead dog, this giant beast was in a much better state. Moreover, people found that the wounds on its body had begun to heal slowly. Its self-healing ability was extremely powerful. Isn't that Zhuo Wen? Could it be that this terrifying giant beast is Zhuo Wen's mount? Someone with sharp eyes saw a young man in snow-white clothes standing on Devour's giant head. He couldn't help but exclaim. The others followed his exclamation and couldn't help but look at Devour. Indeed, they saw the young man in white standing there. Chapter 2159. Heavy losses swoosh. A figure flashed to Ling Bingbing's side and extended his right hand towards Ling Bingbing's neck. Shortly after, that person frowned and looked coldly at Ling Bingbing as he said, "How dare you destroy Sect Master Ling's illusory heavenly bridge?" This person was none other than the Universal Sect's ancestor, Chen Changsheng. Zhuo Wen stood on Devour's head and looked down at Chen Changsheng. He could see the killing intent in Chen Changsheng's eyes. After swallowing the heavenly domain starry sky essence, Zhuo Wen took out half a barrel and poured it into Devour's mouth. Devour, who had been severely injured, instantly recovered to his peak condition after swallowing half a barrel of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence. Devour's body was too big. 1 or 2 drops of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence were useless to Devour. Seeing Zhuowen take out half a barrel of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence for Devour, the crowd went into an uproar. Many cultivators looked at Devour with burning eyes, and their breathing quickened. One had to admit that Zhuowen was really generous. He took out half a barrel of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence for Devour and didn't even frown. What did this mean? It meant that Zhuowen had a lot of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence. Although many cultivators coveted Zhuowen's Heavenly Domain Starry Sky essence, after seeing Ling Binbing's miserable state, many cultivators shuddered and immediately calmed down. Senior Chen, when I fought with Ling Binbing, we didn't say that we couldn't destroy each other's illusory heavenly bridge, did we? Do you have a problem with that? Zhuowen said indifferently. However, he was secretly alarmed. This Chen Changsheng was a little strange. Attack! Chen Changsheng suddenly gave a loud shout. He lifted up the half-dead Ling Binbing with one hand and fiercely threw him towards Zhuowen, while his right leg kicked off and he shot towards Zhuowen like a gust of wind. At the same time, Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz followed closely behind, forming a pincer formation as they quickly approached Zhuowen. Chen Changsheng and the other two were too fast. Before the surrounding crowd could even react, they discovered that Zhuowen had already been surrounded by Chen Changsheng and the other two. At the same time, Chen Changsheng and the others all pulled out their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts and blasted them toward Zhuowen in unison. They wanted to take Zhuowen's life from the get-go. The king spirits, who had wanted to get closer to Zhuowen, were shocked. They sped up, and Old Man Emotionless was the first to move. However, they were quite a distance away from Zhuowen. Moreover, Chen Changsheng and the other two had clearly planned this beforehand. Their cooperation was extremely tacit. Their first move to kill was beyond their expectations. 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Zhuowen, who was standing on Devour's head, couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw Chen Changsheng and the other two's actions. Although he could faintly sense that Ling Binbing was rather fearful and respectful of Chen Changsheng's trio, he didn't pay much attention to it at first, but now he finally realized that all 3 of them actually possessed secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts. One had to know that the difference between a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact and a void sky divine artifact was huge. If a cultivator with a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact had an 8th step void sky divine artifact, they could absolutely crush their opponent. Yao Xiong was only at the 6th step void sky divine artifact, while King Spirit was at the peak of the 7th step void sky divine artifact. However, because Yao Xiong had the supreme shining sunblade, King Spirit was extremely afraid of him. In the end, King Spirit had to pay a heavy price to defeat Yao Xiong. Of course, this was also because King Spirit had the heavenly star essence. Moreover, the supreme shining sun blade wasn't a true secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. It was a divine artifact between a void sky divine artifact and a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. From this, one could see just how powerful a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was. Now that Chen Changsheng and the other two had used their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts, it was clear that they wanted to kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen immediately entered Devour's inner world. At the same time, he released the ice lotuses. The ice lotuses surrounded Devour's body, forming a tough ice armor. At the same time, the ice lotuses released a torrential cold qi, turning Devour's surroundings into a world of ice and snow. The ice lotuses were originally obtained by Yu Wuxi through a fortuitous encounter. In fact, their defensive power had already reached the level of a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. Besides, Devour had also released his innate supernatural abilities, the Purgatory and the Heavenly Thunder Eye. The Purgatory was used to weaken Qin Changxing's team, while the Heavenly Thunder Eye released scorching black lightning that surrounded Zhuowen, creating a lightning defense. Not only that, but Zhuowen also operated the secret technique, Rain of Thousand Swords, and summoned the King's Sword. More than 9,000 ancient swords were summoned by the King's Sword. The dense sword lights turned into a ring-shaped storm of sword lights that revolved around Zhuowen. By the time Zhuowen completed the last layer of defense, Qin Changxing and the other two had already made their move. The secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact in Qin Changxing's hand was a long sword engraved with many ancient patterns. When he swung the sword, the patterns on the sword actually materialized, transforming into a powerful offensive. Yang Zhonghui's secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was an embroidery needle. This embroidery needle was like fire. When it was swung out, it left a fiery red trail in the air, setting off terrifying flames. Fu Yu's secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was a meteor hammer. This meteor hammer was surrounded by starlight. When it was swung out, it set off a dense meteor shower. This meteor shower wasn't illusory, but real. Its power was much stronger than the meteor shower formed in the starry sky. The three attacks bombarded Zhuowen's body. The surrounding starry sky collapsed layer by layer, revealing a vast expanse of darkness and nothingness. Kacha! In an instant, the defense formed by the 9,000 ancient swords around Zhuowen was the first to be hit. Then, Zhuowen's eyes turned gloomy as he saw the 9,000 ancient swords being blown away rapidly. In just 2 breaths of time, 4 to 5,000 ancient swords had been destroyed. In other words, these 4 to 5,000 ancient swords were completely annihilated into nothingness. They were completely useless. Even if Zhuowen wanted to repair them, it would be a little difficult. In 5 breaths of time, the 9,000 ancient swords were completely destroyed, shattering into countless fragments. Then, the domains released by Devour's 2 innate abilities were also broken. They couldn't hold on for long. In the end, 3 attacks landed heavily on Devour's body. Kacha! Then, countless cracks appeared on the ice lotus armor on Devour's surface, as if it would shatter at any moment. Zhuowen felt his internal organs tumbling. Even with Devour's tough body, he still couldn't bear the bombardment of 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Go! Zhuowen roared, ordering Devour to flee as fast as he could. Blood splattered all over the starry sky. On Devour's massive body, several tens of thousands of li-long wounds had appeared. Blood spurted out like a rain of blood. He's not dead. Keep chasing. Qin Changxing was surprised. The 3 of them had attacked at the same time, using their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Even a Void Sky 8 Steps expert would have to bear a grudge. However, Devour's clone had withstood it. Although he was severely injured, he wasn't dead. Old Wu Qing, hurry up! Sensing the pursuit of Qin Changxing's group, Zhuowen shouted at Old Man Wu Qing. Chapter 2160. Teleportation Bang. 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 Qin Changxing's group of 3 crashed heavily into the ancient formation. Soon after, the 3 of them were forced back by the powerful energy of the formation. Their eyes were filled with shock. A peak level 8 formation, and it even has a trace of the charm of a level 9 formation. Who set it up? Fu Yu said in surprise. Let's not worry about that for now. Let's work together to break this formation. Qin Changxing was flustered and exasperated. They were almost able to completely annihilate that Zhuowen, but that brat still managed to escape. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. Fu Yu's and Yang Zhonghui naturally had no objections. Soon after, the three of them used the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts in their hands, no longer holding back. Instead, they fiercely bombarded the ancient formation before them. Boom, boom, boom. The might of the three secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts was indeed terrifying. Under the bombardment of the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts, the entire formation was on the verge of collapse, as if it would shatter at any moment. Outside the ancient formation, Zhuowen's original body flew out from the world within his body. He gloomily looked at the constantly shaking ancient formation and said in a low voice, "Old man Wu Qing, can you handle these three? Handle your sister. Can't you see that all three of them have secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts in their hands? Especially that Chen Changsheng. Although that old man's cultivation is slightly weaker than mine, I can feel that his strength is definitely not ordinary. Coupled with the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts from last time, I may not necessarily be Chen Changsheng's match. Coupled with that Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's, if I were to face the three of them, wouldn't I end up dying a horrible death? Brat, do you want me to die?" Old man Wu Qing cursed loudly, causing Zhuowen to feel extremely awkward. As old man Wu Qing had previously helped him eliminate Yu Wuxi, Zhuowen subconsciously thought that this old man's strength was unfathomable and that he should be able to handle Chen Changsheng's group. But now, it seemed that he had been overthinking things. "Looks like you admit that your strength is inferior to Chen Changsheng's group," Zhuowen said in surprise. "Bullsh asterisk T. Bullsh asterisk T. This old man is weaker than the three of them. If the three of them didn't have secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts, I wouldn't have a problem fighting them alone. However, all three of them have secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts. Old man Wu Qing cursed. Don't tell me you don't have a heaven-crushing divine tool?" Zhuowen looked at old man Wu Qing in surprise. Old man Wu Qing harumphed. "I do, but do you think I'm stupid when faced with three secondary heaven-crushing divine tools? Why should I risk my life for you?" Zhuowen frowned. Thinking about it, he felt that what old Emotionless said made sense. There was no way the old man would risk his life for him. Rumble! Suddenly, the ancient array behind him shook even more violently. Countless cracks appeared on its surface, causing Zhuowen to tremble in fear. "Old man, the three of them are about to break out of the array. Hurry up and activate the teleportation array. Where did you set it up?" Zhuowen's face sank slightly. Old man Wu Qing's eyes flickered. He knew that the situation was urgent, so he did not argue with Zhuowen. He said indifferently, "Come with me. Your battle with Ling Binbing was too intense. You almost destroyed the teleportation array. Fortunately, I was quick-witted and changed the location of the teleportation array ahead of time." Zhuowen followed behind old man Wu Qing with the Emperor's spirit. Soon, they landed near the old site of the Gloomy Illusion sect. The Gloomy Illusion sect had long been reduced to rubble, forming a dangerous area like an asteroid belt. The majestic Gloomy Illusion sect of the past had long since ceased to exist. Passing through the rubble, old man Wu Qing quickly stopped at the center of the rubble. He formed a seal with his hands, and immediately a white light appeared in the empty central area. The white light became more and more intense, extending for several kilometers before interweaving into an enormous array. The instant the formation appeared, the ancient formation trapping Chen Changsheng in the distance finally collapsed completely. Afterwards, Chen Changsheng and the other two rushed out. "Zhuowen, where do you think you're going? You're definitely going to die today." Chen Changsheng immediately spotted Zhuowen in the center of the rubble. When he saw the array in the center, his gaze changed slightly. He could tell that the array was a teleportation array. Swish, 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 swish. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's obviously guessed Zhuowen's intentions as well. They shot out, directly chasing after Zhuowen. They wanted to kill Zhuowen before Zhuowen entered the teleportation array or destroy it. Let's go. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He hurriedly led everyone into the teleportation array, while Old Man Wu Qing remained in the array. He formed a profound finger technique with his right hand and jabbed at the center of the array. An extremely blazing light erupted from the teleportation array. Immediately after, a suction force pulled Zhuowen and the others towards it. Before Chen Changsheng could arrive, Zhuowen and the others finally disappeared into the teleportation array. Bastard! This is a temporary teleportation array. This guy set it up here a long time ago. Cunning brat. He must have been plotting against us. Chen Changsheng's gaze was gloomy. Fu Yu's hands jabbed at the center of the rubble as he silently deduced. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. Brother Fu, what's wrong? Chen Changsheng saw the change in Fu Yu's expression and could not help but ask in surprise. Fu Yu's gaze was strange. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I just deduced the location of the array. In the end, I discovered. Chen Changsheng felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly asked, Discovered what? This teleportation array is a simulation of the ancient teleportation array. The destination is Heaven and Earth sect. Fu Yu sighed. Heaven and Earth sect. Chen Changsheng's expression changed. Wasn't that his sect? Chen Changsheng was no fool. When he knew that Zhuowen was teleporting to Heaven and Earth sect, he knew what Zhuowen wanted to do. Although he had already ordered the sect to activate the defensive array before leaving Heaven and Earth sect, he knew that without the support of an ancestor like him, the array would not be able to unleash its full power. It would not be able to block the attacks of an 8th stage void sky cultivator. I need to return to Heavenly Devil Island. I need to use the ancient teleportation array. Chen Changsheng did not even hesitate and left the place. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's hurriedly returned to Heavenly Devil Island after making arrangements for their high-ranking disciples. Although Zhuowen was heading to the Shiyu Qianquan sect this time. Given Zhuowen's hatred for them, it was likely that he would use the ancient transmission array of the Qianquan sect to cause trouble in their sect. This was not something they wanted to see. The defensive array of Heavenly Devil Island was still activated. When the disciples of Heavenly Devil Island saw Chen Changsheng return, their eyes were filled with vigilance. Magatama narrowed his eyes and said coldly, The three of you, why did you come to my Heavenly Devil Island again? Do you think that my Heavenly Devil Island is easy to bully? Chen Changsheng clasped his hands and said, Brother Mo, it's a misunderstanding. This time, we plan to borrow the ancient teleportation array of your Heavenly Devil Island. In Dongyu, only your Heavenly Devil Island has an ancient teleportation array.